What's shaking, everybody? Welcome to a Monday edition of House Divided. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Chad Hastings.
You're damn right.
Solid. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel. We're going to make you laugh today over the course of the next 3 hours. We might make you scream. Occasionally, people will cry. I don't know. All of the emotions that can occur over the course of 3 hours. And oh, by the way, get notifications. Just click every button that you can click, except for the thumbs down button. And then we'll be satisfied. We won't need to remind you of that. Party people, thank you for getting in the Specs chat and doing the Specs chat thing. We'll take your super chat questions. We love us some super chats. Mr. Hastings, your Aggies looked impressive over the weekend.
Yes, they did.
Your Cowboys did not.
They did not.
Our Cowboys, I should say.
Our Cowboys
did not. On this fine Monday, knowing that there's a mixture of emotions coming out of a Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, a lot of that. That's kind of it. It's kind of a mixture, but I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I enjoyed the football over the weekend. Love learning stuff as we get into conference play and feeling like we're seeing, more real games. So that part of it was good. A&M did look impressive in some ways, little things to clean up here and there, but they looked impressive starting conference play. I could see the Cowboys thing coming a mile away. Didn't scream, didn't yell, didn't freak out, barely swore during the game.
I'm right there with you.
Oh, my God. It was just when you added it all together, you could see it. Real quick quiz, Ketch. What was the score of the Cowboys game when you knew they were in trouble?
After the first drive of the game?
For me, it was 9-3. A little later than that.
Was it? They got a field goal, right? It was 3-0.
Yeah.
But there was a sense of like, I can't remember what play it was. Their quarterback made a play, and I just remember thinking,
Dobbs, yep.
Oh, God. I was like, it's going to be one of those. I didn't know we were going to lose.
Right.
But I was like, it's going to be one of those Sundays, huh? And
yeah, absolutely. And when it was 9-3 is the moment I realized, okay, just win this game. You got to win the game. Find a way. Can they dig their way out of this and win it? They couldn't do that. So, but we had some really interesting college football over the weekend. Obviously, for our big focus, we had a Texas Longhorn team go to Waco and say goodbye to that rivalry in a big-time, emphatic way. Just like everybody else, some little things to nut and bolt and clean up with and all that. But 38-6 looked pretty damn good by the end of it. We'll talk a lot about that today. And Ketch, we've already got fans with some attitude in the chat. They are ready to roll into this next home game. Mr. Hook'em, Kansas has no chance if we are playing our A game. Hook'em emojis. And this one is in your best Mr. T voice. Too broke to pay attention. My prediction for Kansas. Pain in all capital letters.
Yeah. I tell you what, we'll get into Kansas. We'll get into, and look, who was it that said it? I mean, yeah, if Texas plays its A game, yes, you're exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
It's always interesting how the other team's play impacts you. You know what I mean? Like, if you play your A game, that means Kansas presumably is not, because it's a yin and a yang. It's hard for two teams at the same time to play their A games, just by sheer definition.
Sure.
Because if the defense is great, the two things all four things can't be the same at the same time. But I digress. Steve Sarkisian had his Monday press conference today. I kind of expected it to be a bit of a boring affair. This isn't a team with any real major injuries. Anwar didn't have to Anwar asked a C.J. Baxter question and a Jonathan Brooks question, but it didn't have anything to do with whether or not one would play or how they looked at practice or anything like that. I didn't think there was a big headline coming out of today. I don't think I saw a major talking point, although I'll give you mine, Chad.
All right.
Steve Sarkisian loves C.J. Baxter. And even today, he was heaping praise onto Jonathan Brooks, but he wouldn't go so far as to say, Jonathan Brooks is our starter, and I don't expect that to change the rest of the season. He was like, well, we'll see how the season goes. We'll take it from there 1 week at a time, kind of a deal when talking about the running back position. It won't be a major headline. I mean, he just doused Jonathan Brooks in praise today. But when the subject of the starting running back position is concerned, he confessed Jonathan Brooks has an edge right now in touches and snaps and things like that, but he really wouldn't go too far into the future with regards to how that position would be settled from a 1-2 pecking order. And I just think it speaks volumes of what Steve Sarkisian thinks CJ Baxter is. It hasn't happened yet, but Jonathan Brooks has about a 300-yard edge in rushing yards right now this season through 4 games. And yet you cannot kill the idea of what CJ Baxter may become as a true freshman in the eyes of Steve Sarkisian. But beyond that, it was pretty normal. He's got a lot of respect for Kansas. I thought there were some real insightful little details about what he thinks about Kansas. And I also thought his responses every time the Kansas game from 2 years ago was brought up, he had a visceral response. Like he just, like he couldn't hide it. But then at one point, somebody asked him about the Kansas game specifically. And like, did you learn anything from that? And he gave a very evolved, like just upper levels, like self-awareness answer by saying, well, look, we probably needed that. I'm glad that happened. Without it, maybe some changes don't get made inside the program as quickly as they did, because that gave us a real idea of what we needed to change as much as anything could. And I was like, all right, coach, but I saw your body language every time someone mentioned that game from 2 years ago, and he would just, like there was just a bit of a, like I said, a visceral response to like, I wish you guys wouldn't bring that up. I hate that being brought up. And I think by the end of it, his will to avoid that question died because so many people asked about it. So here we are. It's 2 years removed from that game 2 years ago. Now these are 2 undefeated ranked teams. And he talked about Kansas like they were an undefeated ranked team. He has a lot of respect for their coaching staff. And I think, like I do, I think he likes their players a lot.
Yeah, good news if you're a Texas fan that Kansas snuck into the rankings this week. I think that's a good thing. You obviously have a chance now to knock them back out, but they creep in at 24. I did notice, what you heard there on the running backs, thought about you and others that have gotten into that conversation. It's either that he really does believe that CJ he senses the sensitivity about his lead back comment, or he sees this as it needs to be a couple of guys and he doesn't really have a lead back. Or maybe it's kind of both. But it feels like he's into the lead back idea. Otherwise, why would he have said Baxter's his lead? But what he did a good job of, I thought, was to give Brooks, like you said, give him the praise. How about the fact that he said they clocked Brooks at just under 22 miles an hour on that big run? That's interesting.
Look, Jonathan Brooks is no – I think –
I didn't realize he was that kind of fast. I knew he was pretty quick. I didn't think he was slow.
I think most guys at that level, when they hit a top speed, I think they get into that area. I don't even know what, it's hard to know what some of those speeds are sometimes. Was there a wind?
Right.
What does it mean? Because, it's a little bit to me sometimes. And the fact that he even mentioned that to me means they've never clocked him that fast before. Right?
Yeah.
He didn't say, well, he hit 22 miles an hour on Saturday, which is about what we get every time we measure those things. Instead, it stood out like, oh, he hit 22 miles an hour. That's new. And, whenever guys are playing football, I don't think enough attention gets paid to the Jason from Friday the 13th, like of what that can happen to your speed, right? I've always said the fastest I would ever run is if Jason were coming at me with like a hatchet knife or something. It's like, oh, I got to be 4'4" to get away from Jason. Right. It happens in football all the time. Jonathan Brooks ran 22 miles an hour because somebody was chasing him.
Yeah, that's true. That was impressive to me. And then also when he said he's earned the bulk of the carries. Right now, that's the guy. 24 gets the bulk of the carries until further notice, and we'll just figure out what further notice is. But I really enjoyed what we saw out of him, out of that running game. We said they had to be patient, and they were. 34 carries. We said they didn't need to go crazy with deep passes. They certainly didn't. Ewers looks good. Running game looked good. You've got little things in the special teams that are going to want to get adjusted and tweaked. By the way, Texas fans, no adjustment on punt returns in this coming out of the game.
Can I do a rant?
Sure.
It was so obvious that a couple of dipshits would make a thing out of that. I said Saturday, we'll get to Monday, and the 2 muff punts will turn into what drop passes were a week ago. Mm-hmm. This idea that there's a crisis. Well, there's not. Like somebody asked, I don't even remember who it was, asked, are you any consideration to taking Xavier Worthy off of punt returns?
Yeah, and by the way, he pulled the Jimbo Fisher there. He answered before the question was done.
Because it was stupid.
He immediately jumped that question. Yeah.
He's second in the Big 12 in punt return average right now at 16 yards a return.
Catch. He is
Texas
really
hasn't had a punt return guy average that. I've never in my entire life, I think at any point in any season, can I remember Texas having a punt returner averaging 16 yards a kick?
Yeah. He's really starting to get his claws into that position. I mean,
and
he's
he
really
was not that a year ago. He was very average on punt returns.
Right. We talked about it coming into the season of, were we going to see a step get taken in either kick or punt return for Texas? We talked about him. We know how good a receiver he can be, and we talked about all those issues that in terms of the receiving and what he could do. But what was he going to do on that step? You can feel it. You can feel it happening at the punt return. And by the way, Ketch, you asked me last week when I predicted 35-17. You're like, I just don't see how Baylor could get to 17. Those mistakes set it up. Yep. If that second field goal had been a touchdown and they got lazy, then it's 4, then it's 10. And if they do it again, it's 17 if Ford doesn't get the pick. If they got lazy and if they let the complimentary football fall apart, Sark started with complimentary football today, and that's where I would have started too. This defense made sure that 6 stayed 6. And it ends up 38-6 instead of 38-17 or something that would have felt a little more of what USC is giving up right now.
2 quick thoughts. One, we have to stop doing this thing where when we see something happen in a game, even if it happens a couple of times, we have to stop this thing where it's it's a crisis. The biggest example of these fake crises that fans and media make, 1990. It was known to 1991. It's Emmitt Smith's second year in the league.
Right.
And he had a stretch of fumbleitis. He fumbled in a game against the Jets. He fumbled in a game against the Oilers, which was a fantastic game that the Cowboys lost, but it was really good game. And then suddenly it's is Emmitt Smith going to lose his starting running back job because Jimmy Johnson won't be able to swallow fumbles? It's all these years later, as he's the all-time leading rusher in the NFL and the kind of the face of a dynasty, nobody ever really remembers that 2 years ago you made this really ridiculous take of is Emmitt Smith on the verge of losing his job? When Sarkisian was asked about Xavier Worthy, he responded like a coach that can't believe the people asking him questions don't know how good he is.
Yep.
He's no, before the question could be answered, he was no, silly.
Right.
No, we're not taking Xavier Worthy off of punt returns. And oh, by the way, you guys don't know what he's getting in the way of coverages. He made a point to mention it a couple of times, though, teams for the last couple of weeks he's been mentioning, teams are doing everything they can to stop Xavier Worthy. And it's leaving opportunities open for other guys on the team. He singled out his blocking today. I just think when he hears people ask about Xavier Worthy, I think he's bewildered by the cluelessness that
Yeah.
goes into questioning one of the probably real elite wide receiver talents he's ever coached. And he's had some talented dudes.
Yeah.
I just think I thought it was Mickey Mouse reporting stuff to show up today and to take the bait. It was
Right.
such bait.
Because
Hey, coach, do you think you should be replaced? No, it's just something that happened.
right.
And
Yeah, there's a difference.
The backup guy fumbled one too. Like,
Right.
I think people probably have worked it into their heads that Xavier Worthy dropped two. He didn't.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing we talked about, whether it's a fumble, drop, or whatever. The whole thing about, once is an occurrence, twice is a coincidence, three is a trend. Anytime a fan sees their team do something they don't want them to do twice in one game, it does cause them to freak out a little bit. The question today was, how do you go about working on tightening up the little things on special teams? The question wasn't, do you replace your punt returner? That's the sloppy way to go about answering that question. He's earned the right he's earned the deference. He's making huge plays on the other side of things to where when those happen. And by the way, and we've got people chatting in, I get it. I get this when fans do it, Ketch. Christopher says, Ketch, you still can't muff two punts, give the other team back the ball inside the 20. Better team would eat you alive if you do it. It's not a crisis, but you got to clean it up. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Of course.
Yeah.
It's kind of like we talked about with the drops, right? Well, you can't keep dropping balls like that. Correct.
The issue is, are these things like every week a team's not going to be perfect. So every week something happens. Other teams make plays. Look, Ryan Watts had a couple of passes like completed against him.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of them were over the top. In fact, the kid from Baylor throws one of the prettiest balls you'll see all season long from any quarterback.
He ain't never throwing a ball like that again. Rest of his life.
In his dreams, he'll dream about the ball that he threw over the top to the guy that beat Watts on that play.
Yeah.
A week ago, Des Bryant is tweeting about Ryan Watts and calling him a first-round cornerback. A week ago, we're talking about he's really having a good season. Saturday, he had a couple of balls completed against him, and I've seen it on Orange Bloods a few times in the last 24, 48 hours, where now there's Ryan Watts questions. Is this going to be the thing that, destroys the defense on a day where the passing game gives up a few plays? I mean, maybe, like if there's a loss later in the season, it probably will include the other team making some plays and, throwing the ball and completing passes against your cornerback. Those things happen. This is not a perfect football team. They may be the number 3 team in the country, but Chad and I can probably rattle off 10 things that they can improve on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
How about don't jump off sides a bunch this weekend at home? That was one of the questions. Why have you had 5 procedure penalties at home and only 1 on the road? And Sarkisian actually gave a pretty good answer to that. It was like, you know what? Maybe we're really dialed in on defense, or on road games, and maybe we're not quite as much at home. And like maybe as coaches, we need to reinforce that a little more. I thought it was actually a really revealing answer, an honest answer. I thought Sark was great today. When Sark shows up and he's not in a pissy mood and like he entertains questions at the spirit that they're asked in, he just gives some really good, honest, revealing answers about the way they approach things, about, sometimes really specific answers to questions that are very nerdy. But like, if you're a nerdy football head, you can go, oh, cool. Yeah. And I thought today, Sark was like A+ at the press conference for me today. I thought it was really good. And I thought, to the spirit of that question, yes, Texas can't muff punts every game.
Right. Yeah. And but again, that complimentary football was right there. Defense didn't let it become a big deal. I thought that was key. And in rewatching the game, Ketch, and I'm going through the rewatch of it, man, I'm trained to watch defense. I was raised as a pro football fan, a Dallas Cowboys fan during an era of defense, an Aggie fan during an era of defense. And That's what I focus on. But how can you not with this Texas football team? With the way that number 90 is playing right now, what Byron Murphy's throwing out, and to the very first play of the game, first play from Baylor, the duo that Jalen Ford and David Benda are putting on the field right now, the gang tackling mentality, the swarming mentality that they're putting on a field right now is so impressive. Now, the level of competition's about to go up, and it's about, depending on how you're looking at it, it may be about to go up a lot. But I really like what I'm seeing out of this Texas defense, and that would give me confidence as a fan that things can be covered up. You're never going to be perfect. Your offense can be a little sluggish. Your special teams can even have moments where you go, that's not exactly what you want. This defense feels dialed in right now.
You know, it's a real football coach's answer or reply to want to take a negative and turn it into a positive. But, you know, over a 12-game season, one of the things that your defense has to be really good at is sudden change defense. Offense, something happens, ball's turned over, they've got to go on the field, and a lot of times their backs are against the wall. Sometimes you muff the ball at the 20-yard line, and you got to come out and defend a situation that is not of your making.
Yeah, and it's not fair. It's never fair.
It's never fair, but you know what? No. They practice these things.
Right. They scream. Yeah, you're right.
They do red zone defense. They do sudden change. They do these things in April and May and going into August. These are things that they work on. And I guarantee you forget about in the heat of the moment. In the heat of the moment in game 1 against Rice, Sarkisian probably regrets putting his defense in a position where, you know, they force a field goal. They give up a couple of points. That's on Sark. I'm sure on the ground, he regrets Xavier Worthy fumbling the ball on a punt, what it does. But what those mistakes created was an opportunity for their defense to get reps, the real thing, in something that they practice in sudden change defense. And one of the things I've really been impressed with this Texas team so far, they haven't needed it a lot. It sucks when you have a defense that's good and they got to go on the field and defend like 4 or 5 sudden changes per game. Texas hasn't done that a lot, but in the times they've turned the ball over this season, it's even if it was on downs, it is given the chance for the defense to flex its muscles a little bit. And I guarantee you, he walks into the coach's office today, a couple of days removed from the game, and he's still kind of bouncing at like, you know what? We turned that ball over 20 yards from the end zone, and they got nothing. That defense gave up nothing.
Yeah, and how about the exchange of you give it to him with an opportunity. Ford makes the pick. I'd forgotten about this sequence till he said it today. Ford gets that pick, should have stayed in the end zone, comes out to the 5. It's a mistake. He admits, I should have stayed in and gotten us the offense still goes 95 yards and makes it 38-6.
Complimentary football. Chad, ironically, complimentary football is like kind of at the root of what we were really going to focus on at the top of the hour today. We've gotten into some press conference conversation. I wonder if 4 games into the season, before this season started, I think Sarkisian thought we're going to be the most wide open offense in the country. I got skill position guys coming out the wazoo. Hell, I got a running back that's like 16th in the country in rushing, and I won't even give him the starting job forevermore because I think there might be a better guy. Like, they're loaded with skill position talent. And I think he thought if we're going to get to the playoff, we're going to have to average 40, 45 points a game. Like, we're going to have to be one of the best offenses in the country, and we got the pieces to be that. So let's go do it. And then I think a third of the way through the season, he's like, our defense is pretty badass. Our defense is pretty badass. And you know what? We don't quite have to be as wheeling and dealing on offense. We don't have to quite have to lean into – sorry, you completely distracted me there, Chad. Shame on you for sending me a message while I'm talking. I think he thinks this defense now is so good that I think they're a little bit more conservative on offense. They're not asking Quinn Ewers to go try to be the first pick in the draft. They're asking Quinn Ewers to be a really talented but effective game manager and bus driver. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way at all, but he's doing a really good job of it. And I think that moving forward, we may see Texas just maybe more buttoned up offensively compared to what we thought they might be, because they are a complementary football team that together, offense, defense, and yes, even special teams, because I think once you get beyond the muffs that we're talking about, this is a group. They're getting good punting. The coverage units have been good. That play Trey Wisner made on Saturday where he just, I don't know, man, like, I'm surprised he got out of Waco without somebody pressing charges against him, because he maimed that guy.
That was impressive.
he maimed him. I just think this is a better, much more complete, complementary. It felt like Sarkisian said that word 25 times today, but it's all of those things together. And it's why I think this team is legitimately in the top 5, deservedly so. It's why I think you can start looking at the schedule and feeling like, you know what? This is actually doable. It's all of this added up together. What I didn't think I would think about this Texas team 4 games in was how complete it is. When I went into this season with a lot of question marks about the defense, how good is David Benda going to be? Where's the pass rush going to come from? Are there playmakers on this defense besides Jalen Ford? Because there really wasn't a year ago. Chad, let me read you some defensive stats real quick.
Mm-hmm.
These are all defensive stats. Third down defense, 17th in the country. First downs, 16th. Interceptions, 12th. Red zone defense, 2nd. Rushing defense, 18th. Sacks, 18th. Scoring defense, 12th. Team passing efficiency, 24th. Turnover margin, 16. Yards allowed per game, 24th. That's 10 different statistical categories on defense, including rushing, passing, third down, sacks, turnovers, you name it. All that kind of encompasses everything. And Texas is no worse than 24th in the country in any of those. And in 8 of the 10, they're 18th in the country or better. I thought this defense had a chance to be very good. Those numbers are the makings of a great defense. However, the next 2 weeks will give us a much better idea of should we rightfully be talking about them in maybe historically good terms or not. It's the fun of this Texas season. The first 4 weeks have been fantastic. The next 2 weeks are going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that's what's good. You know, if you're a Texas fan here, and Texas fans, I always say they're a pretty realistic fan base. I think they know what they've seen, and I think they know what they're about to see. The 4 teams they've played, you're really happy about the performance because the defense has handled their business against 4. I'll put Bama in the group too. 4 pretty clunky offenses in a way. Certainly 3 of the 4 felt really clunky at times. And you could argue there's 2 teams that could have beaten Texas. Clearly Bama could have beaten them. And if you want to tell me Wyoming could have beaten them because it was 10-all, I'll let you do that. Now we're about to see, this could be the first week Texas's defense will face a quarterback that's better than theirs. Is he? I'm not sure. But they haven't played one yet. I know that for sure because Milroe was certainly not better than Ewers. And I wouldn't argue that Gabriel is either. So the question, though, could be, are they about to play a quarterback that might be it's certainly better than they faced. It's the best quarterback they faced and a team I think that could beat them, followed by, even if the quarterback's not great, another team that could beat them. So now let's watch this defense react. But I agree with you. Those numbers are impressive and more impressive than we thought. I did not quite know if they were going to get to that top 20, top 25 level. So the real test of what you're talking about with Sark to me, Ketch, is in 2 weeks. Once the Oklahoma game is done and he heads into a bye week, will he think about, that's half the season gone at that point. Will he change the way he does business for those final 6 games of the year? That's what because he certainly called plays in Waco like he had a badass defense. And I wonder if he keeps doing it.
And I think there's, it's horses for courses. I think that there will be weeks when he like against Alabama, when it's like foot on the gas, let's go. And I think there will be other games that they may treat the TCU game differently in Fort Worth. They may treat the game in Ames different than that. Like there are different ways to approach games. Texas right now feels like Dennis Eckersley. They got more than a pitch. They've got several pitches. And I think the sense going into the season that Texas was going to be like heavy metal football. All offense, go, 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 Ewers, Worthy, Mitchell, Sanders. It's just craziness all the time. And I think they're like, okay, we can absolutely do that, but we don't need to do that all of the time. And I think that, again, being able to be diversely functional, I think are things that will aid. I saw Tom in the chat, Tom G, saying that when you get to the playoff, if you get to the playoff, that you need to be able to be heavy metal football, full on go on offense. And that if you don't do it during the regular season, maybe it makes it difficult to turn it up and ratchet it up a notch when you get to the playoffs. Those are real rich people problems. I got to be honest with you. Like, that's like Elon Musk problems. You know, when you get to the playoffs, is your offense going to be able to turn it up? I hear you, Tom, but I think there's also 8 more games, 9 including a Big 12 championship game, where Texas can pace themselves and I think eventually get there. You want this team peaking in November and not in September and not in October. I say this every year. I say it before the season starts. You want to be better in September than you are in August. You want to be better in October than you are in September. You want to be better in November than you were in October. And then you'd like to be able to get to December and have something to play for and be better in December than you were in November. And if by chance you're in the playoffs and you play in January, they can get some too. So I just think that you got to view this from the capacity of there's more than 70% of the season left. It's a 4-0 team. They're rightfully in the top 5. They're way more complete, I think, than most people were expecting. I know there are people who are like, whoa, Ketch. I told you that this defense was going to be great. Okay, there's like 5 of you out there that legitimately thought the defense would be this good. I think the hope was that the defense would be good, that they would find some answers to the questions that existed, and that they would complement a Texas offense that was expected to be elite. I think it's turned out that the defense may be more elite than the offense. Nobody was saying that. Not one person told me Texas will get to the playoffs because their defense is the best part of the team. They look really complete right now, but I do agree there's a lot of stuff that can still be worked on. Don't for a second ever think that Chad and I are of the belief that perfection exists in September ever. Like we're pretty rational. I bet Chad would even tell you, you know what, Ketch? I hope what you just said about that whole October and September, and I hope the Aggies do that. Like that's really the sign of a good to very good to great team, are teams that make progress over the course of the season. I think one of the things about Texas during the first couple of years under Sarkisian that was kind of damning about the coaching staff was that they didn't get better. I don't know that in either of the last 2 years, by the end of the season, you would say, oh yeah, this team's made incredible progress. Instead, you'd single out a couple of players and say, they got better, but like not many guys. This is a team that if they're going to play for everything they want to play for, will have to do that. It's what makes, again, the coming weeks really, really interesting. Now, guys, before and Tracy, I'll get to your super chat question in just a second, but we got to pay us some bills. And I want to tell you guys about Mojo Insurance. Do this. put that full screen of Mojo up there. First of all, scan that QR code. Just do it. Scan it. It's a form specific for Orange Bloods members and Orange Bloods Live viewers. They have people, a couple of people specifically reserved to do nothing but help you. You let them know you're from Orange Bloods. You fill out that form. They will check and see whether or not they can save you money. Home insurance, car insurance, you name it. They shop with over 50 A-rated carriers, Travelers, Farmers Insurance. It's all there, Progressive. They're all there. They will go through the A-rated carriers, and they'll look to see if they can save you money. And if they can, they will save you money. And if you let them do that, you'll have extra money. It's that simple. Go to mojoinsurance.agency. It's really quite that simple. And let them do for you what, quite frankly, I think we want people to do all the time in all areas. Who can save me money so that I can freely spend it in like frivolous manner? Because nothing's better, Chad, than being able to spend frivolously with saved money.
That's what I've read.
You know what? I'm going to set this $100 bill on fire. You know why? I saved it.
That is what I've read. I've heard about that.
I've heard about those things.
Yeah, that's a rumor.
With Mojo, you can stop hearing about them and you can start living it. Tracy, hot take. I haven't even read it, but I love a super chat that starts out declaring hot take.
Here we go.
Please stop throwing swing passes that make AD the lead blocking receiver. I love him, but he sucks at blocking. Just turn on the tape to see it. I love, Tracy, that of all of the things that you could be thinking today on a Monday, you were like, I got to get off this hot take. It's been eating me alive, not just for the past couple of days, for the last 3 weeks.
If they don't have
asking him
5.
to be the lead blocker. Amen, Tracy.
Tracy, we hope the rest of your day goes smoothly. Get that off your chest.
Oh, Tracy, here, do it with me, right, like this. Woos. Maybe even rub the ears a little bit. Yeah. I hear that's very relaxing. It feels real good right now.
By the way, Tracy, I don't think you're wrong. I think that.
Yeah. Well, then there's that.
I mean, again, we're the things you're trying to tweak to get to that elite level. You don't, again, that this week found a better route on a big gain for Gunnar Helm. Didn't ask him to do what you did 2 weeks ago, or last week, I should say. You asked him to do something reasonable for him. If number 5 is not a badass blocker, stop asking him to be that. Yeah, something Ricardo. That's not even a hot take. Right. Exactly. You got to do it. That's fair. That's probably fair. Also, Ketch, look who's back in the chat with this Texas defense looking like they're looking. Daddy Sorrell has returned. Legit championship run are the 3 words he's typing in all capital letters today.
It's good to see Barry in the Specs super chat. And B, that is like the least hyperbolic post you've ever made,
right,
in the chat. That is so, I mean, yes, legit championship run. That's what Texas is facing. And not just a championship, multiple championships.
I was going to say, certainly when we know that there's an order to those championships. If you're specifically thinking of Jerry World, absolutely.
Technically, it should be multiple championships run.
Yeah.
He actually dialed it back a little bit.
He did.
He focused on the first one before the second one.
He's trying to keep it under control. I understand it. That defense is looking really good after 38-6. We'll be talking about it obviously throughout the show and throughout the week as Texas gets ready for Kansas. Jump into the Specs chat. Shout out to Specs for getting it done for us. Get all stocked up at Specs, specsonline.com if you're not heading to DKR, or if you just need some stuff from Specs, get that taken care of. We will get to Cowboy sadness at some point today and try to process that. But also,
I'm not even sad, Chad.
No. But also, there's some other good news for Texas fans. Not only did their team look good in Waco and finish off that that series with a big win, 38-6. But the Longhorns got huge recruiting news that they were looking for. In this case, it's a big-time offensive line prospect. The Brandon Baker thing did happen. It was yesterday he made the decision, correct?
Last night at about 8:15 Central Time.
There you go. Brandon Baker, the stud offensive lineman from Modern Day in California. He had Georgia and Ohio State on the list. He'd taken visits there. Those two really stand out if you're an offensive lineman and those two care. Bama, Auburn, Florida are all also on the list. But he picked Texas, Ketch. I know this is where you thought it would end up. Tell me a little more. Tell the folks about Brandon Baker. How big a deal was last night?
Well, first of all, Chad, nice job. Modern Day.
Modern Day.
You can't go Mater Day. People getting mad at me because I've turned it into a Pixar film.
Yeah, no, those things matter. We don't call you Jeef.
Think about uppity, just because we had that word said twice last week, so why not bring it back? Think of like uppity English server guy, where it's like, oh, good evening, Modern Day. Like if you say it like you're a butler, it makes it easier to remember. Say it like the butler. By the way, who's your favorite butler of all time? You got Alfred from Batman.
Yes.
You got Benson.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I hadn't thought about Benson. Benson is the butler that turns into the governor. Or lieutenant governor, one of the two. Man, it might be Benson. I'm going to go with Benson. Benson over Alfred, barely.
Hold on, I'm going to tell you mine. I forgot his name, but it does not mean
just
that
barely.
It's still not my favorite. If you go to the 1981 movie Arthur, you remember that movie?
Never seen it all the way through.
What? The Dudley Moore movie?
I know, it's disappointing.
It's still fantastic. He's got a butler named Hobson. And okay. Hobson like slaps him around with a glove and is constantly telling him, I don't want to have to wipe your ass and stuff like that. Like, I like butlers that have a little bit of a bite to them. So I like Hobson from Arthur. If you think about it, say it like Hobson from Arthur. I'm sorry, I completely allowed myself to go down the rabbit hole. Let me give you 3 things why Brandon Baker really, really, really matters. And oh, by the way, he matters so much. I have confirmed that Adam Gorney from Rivals.com will join us in the 2:00 hour at 2:20.
All right.
We'll let the national guys tell you a little bit about Brandon Baker and why you should be excited. So, number 1, he's the second highest rated recruit and the second super blue chip recruit. And if you're wondering what's a super blue chip recruit, what makes that different than a regular blue chip? 5 stars or high 4 stars. By the way, it might have been Mark Rosner. I can't remember who asked the question, but somebody today specifically asked about star rankings. And they said they all can't be 5 stars and high 4 stars. And I was like, you've been reading Orange Bloods. I know that. I think that the fact that he is a super blue chip, that's why it matters. Those guys are worth their weight in gold. And oh, by the way, he's 300 pounds of gold. So that part matters. Number 2, Texas hadn't picked up a super blue chip offensive lineman since the 2022 class. And that's not that long ago. But I think you'd like to get one of those guys in every single class if you can. And if you can't, you definitely want to get one every other class. I mean, it's about stockpiling talent. It's about the Jimmies and the Joes and not the X's and the O's. And Kelvin Banks isn't going to be around here forever. And what you get in a Brandon Baker is a guy that probably is about 50-50 of being an NFL player when he leaves college. And, that 50% where you miss, that's injuries. That's a lot. Everything that a guy can sidetrack a guy, that fits into that part. That he's really, really talented. So, he's the kind of guy that instead of 1 out of every 4 or 5, 1 out of every 2 turn into a big time level player. He helps you cheat the math. And that's what recruiting is all about. How do you, when we get into development, that's not the same as recruiting. Development is an entirely different discussion. Recruiting is about taking advantage of the math as best as possible. It's about going into Vegas and finding the game that gives you a 50-50 opportunity to make the same amount of money as a game where the odds are 1 out of every 10 or worse. Like, I'll play that game. Odds are still the same. The payout's still the same, but the odds are better, as opposed to you get a regular 4-star guy and suddenly your ads multiply by 2.5, and then you get a regular 3-star guy, and now they're multiplying by 5 and 10 times. So he matters because players with his ranking pan out as big-time players at significantly higher rates than any other rated prospect. And then number 3, man, I can't stress this enough. Texas has been wanting to put a major flagpole at Mater Dei High School since Steve Sarkisian arrived. Brandon Baker becomes the first real big-time guy that he'll have landed since he was at Texas at Mater Dei. They got Spencer Shannon, a tight end, who's a nice prospect, but not elite by any stretch of the imagination a year ago. Now they get Brandon Baker. Next week they'll bring in, or this weekend they'll bring in an offensive line teammate of his, DeAndre Carter, who you think has a chance to be potentially a big-time player. And then next year they've got multiple national top 50 guys who've already been on campus numerous times that you just want to keep stockpiling. So what Brandon Baker represents really is what Corey Redding would have represented at North Shore High School back in 1999. It's like, oh, we get to start recruiting here now. Same thing when Texas first got its first IMG commitment. Once upon a time, it felt like under Tom Herman, Texas and IMG would never happen. But now it feels like Texas can go in and get anybody from IMG. So they put up a flagpole at Mater Dei High School. And I think in the coming next couple of 2-3 years, you're going to see them sign 4, 5, 6 guys from Mater Dei. And there's about to be a big Mater Dei pipeline into Texas. And this is the first real monster step in that.
And Ketch, just to clarify what you're saying about the other guy, it's DeAndre Carter? Is that his name?
Yes.
The other guy. He is the left tackle currently.
Correct.
At Mater Dei. So if you go watch the video of Brandon Baker, if you're a Texas fan, you are focused on the right tackle, as you'll see in the video. But just for fun, maybe peek over at the left tackle, and he is currently a commit to Auburn. But like you said, he's coming in to visit for the Kansas game.
And he is national. He's a border super blue chip. He's number 113 nationally.
Okay.
He's more like the guy. You know what's really interesting about Baker is he's 6'5", 295. He's kind of a lean, athletic guy. He's not one of these massive monsters that we know Kyle Flood loves. Kyle Flood loves guys taller than 6'5". And if they're a biscuit away from 370, that'll do.
He's
when
good.
You look at DeAndre Carter, his teammate, that guy is 6'5", 345.
That's more the large human. It's
more of the large human that we know Kyle Flood likes.
Yeah.
I think there's a very good chance that they could make DeAndre Carter happen. The one thing DeAndre Carter will know is how many of his future teammates are about to be at Texas as well. He's going to know, okay, there's a couple of 2025 guys. Baker's going to be there. Shannon's already there. The wide receiver coach went to Mater Dei. Sark basically lives there. He loves coming in. Like it's becoming University of Texas West. Or you could say it's becoming Mater Dei East. But either way, DeAndre Carter committed to Auburn. And so Texas is having a big year. Auburn isn't. And I'm not saying that kid's going to peel off. I'm just saying with Baker now committed and with some of the guys that are leaning that way in 2025, bringing Carter in this weekend, it wouldn't shock me in the least if that's a kid that peels off and flips to Texas. And we would then be having the same conversation about Carter that we are with Baker, in that he's a big-time prospect, maybe not quite as a big-time prospect as Baker, but Carter's close. but he gives you another modern day. I mean, you could almost get to a point where half the modern day offense this year could end up being future Texas Longhorn football players. That is like the dream. Like CJ Baxter being healthy and on the field, it's the dream that Steve Sarkisian has on the regular.
Oh, that was huge news for Texas last night. And if you're into the what's going on the field part in reference to Auburn, forget about that A&M was the team that did it. If you're a Texas fan, that Auburn team looking like they look right now, maybe that's great news. If you can get this kid in for a visit, if your team can look really good, and then Auburn continues to look that clunky, because they looked very clunky on Saturday. Their offense just looks very out of sorts. Hugh Freeze is trying to figure some things out, but they don't feel like they're right there in a way that Texas does right now. So that is huge news coming out of the weekend for Texas. Big home game coming up, and Carter coming in for the visit. So Brandon Baker was a big part of the weekend haul for Texas. We're going to continue to talk Texas over Baylor, 4-0. Just how excited are you if you're a Texas fan? Take today, take a breath, and then get as excited as you want. How big of an excitement level do you have? You stayed at number 3. Florida State didn't threaten you. Not only that, they actually slipped in the poll. We'll get into some of that rearrangement, but Texas stayed right there at 3 after Georgia and Michigan.
Did you, JD asks, when are y'all getting Coach Aranda back on the pod? Did you see the post-game show?
I did not. No, I was checking out some late night games. What happened?
We were talking about Aranda. Anwar called him trash.
Whoa.
And then he said, and then I said something. And then maybe, Blake, if you want to find that, maybe we can play that a little bit later in the show. It was pretty funny. I've been somewhat happy that what happened next didn't turn into a big deal, because there's a world where like SID offices are contacting you. And
right.
He says, hey, Aranda's right here. Do you want to talk to him? Look at Blake.
Wait. Who said Aranda's right here? Anwar did?
Then he scooped up a trash can from the press box and put it in the chair. And I interviewed the trash can while Anwar stood behind him and put his arms out and like.
Wow. That sounds fantastic. That sounds fantastic. As a person who doesn't like to always be involved in the trouble causing, but watch the trouble causing, I kind of enjoy that thought.
So Blake literally stopped me before I could tell Chad about it and said, should we?
Dang.
I don't know about that. Maybe we'll let sleeping dogs lie. Yeah. I have to admit, I woke up on Sunday morning, and because when that whole Mississippi thing happened, Chad, I was in the middle of covering, I think Texas played Texas Tech that night. So watching the game, and I'm like, why do I have like 100 mentions on Twitter?
Yeah.
And I hit my mentions, and I'm like,
oh,
people are upset about that.
I saw parts of the post game. I did not see that part. Now I got to go back. And check that out. Somebody tells me I missed the interview of a lifetime, so I need to go and check that out. Wow.
Hey, JD, you modern day yourself, okay? Modern day it.
Oh, thanks to over 430 people in the Specs chat. We're headed towards 1 o'clock, which is buy or sell. 1:20, we may clean up some college football and maybe some NFL as well. Ketch, do you have any Cowboy fan feelings that we need to process before we get to buy or sell? You doing okay today?
Look, man, you and I have seen Cowboys season start with excitement. And people do what Texas fans do, like 2-0 national championship. And the thing is, it's even more so as a Cowboys fan. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I feel like Cowboy fans aren't even saying that stuff. And the national media just starts losing their minds because it's a great like cottage industry talking about the Cowboys.
Sure.
Should we nickname the Cowboys? It's like, the Cowboys played 2 crappy quarterbacks, and I heard national media members yesterday talking about, well, you know, they were already at the point where they were going to give this defense a nickname, and I was like, who?
Right.
Who is giving the defense a nickname?
It's because everybody doesn't stop and do the kind of things we were doing last week when you and I would talk about it on and off the show. It's like, I kept asking you, what are you learning? What do you know? And it's like, I don't know. I'm not sure. You always talk about what do you know versus what do you think you know and stuff like that. There just hadn't been a real football game yet. Yesterday was the first time they were asked to play a real NFL football game. And they were asked to do it without their starting cornerback, left tackle, center, and right guard. And then it didn't start their way. And then they had to try to figure it out. And, they didn't get out of it. The trap got set. They couldn't get out of it. And now they're 2-1. They're not 1-2 or 0-3. Later on in the crap bag, we'll get to those numbers, why you don't want to be that. But you got to take your medicine if you're a Cowboys fan. I know it's hard. If you're younger than Ketch and me, you're freaking out today. But if you're our age or older and you're freaking out, it's just because you haven't been paying attention. You had to know that was coming at some point. You had to be able to breathe that one in and just deal with it and move on and realize, okay, missing some details because they're the Cowboys. Let's just see what it is moving forward. I frankly don't know. I don't know exactly what it is yet.
I didn't think yesterday was going to be the day that it happened because the Cowboys were still playing crap quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
That guy at one point had like 118 yards passing in the fourth quarter, and I was like, wait a minute.
If you told me that Dan Quinn Cowboys defense was going to be the first to give up a win by Joshua Dobbs as a starter, I'd have said you're crazy. I'd have said you're absolutely crazy. But that's what happened. If you had told me that a team in the NFL was going to have 35 minutes of time of possession and lose, I'd have said, no, that's crazy. That doesn't happen. Oh, it happened. It happened. It did. So,
one thing I know about the Cowboys, and I'm going to give you my hottest Monday hot take after I finish this sentence.
All right.
You know that Dak's got a limit on him, that Dak Prescott can, at his best, and we are beyond, I don't think we're watching a guy who's going to be better at 35 than he is at 30. And I don't think he's better at 30 than he was at 25 or 26 or 27. I think Dak is a pretty good quarterback. But Dak's got one of them in him all the time. On any given day, you can watch Dak play a mediocre game where like his final pass of the game is an interception in the end zone that he threw into triple coverage because he's not that good. And so yesterday was that game. Yesterday, like at no point, and I'm at the point now, I don't get mad at Dak anymore. Oh, my uncle's like sending me Facebook messages. Goddamn Dak, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like,
right.
What do you really expect?
That's an interesting way to.
What do you expect with Dak? Do you expect him to perform like one of the best quarterbacks in the league for an entire season? I don't. So yesterday happens and I shrug my shoulders, and here's my hot take. If we think about the Cowboys quarterback position for the last 18 years, Romo comes in 2006. He takes over for Bledsoe while Parcells is still there, and he holds on to the job for basically a decade. Then Tony Romo gets hurt. Dak Prescott takes over. Dak's putting in, he ain't there yet, but he's creeping up on about a decade. In the last 18 years, those two guys have pretty much been the quarterback for the Cowboys. And the Houston Texans have at no point in any of that time have they ever had a quarterback situation better than the Cowboys. They do now. CJ Stroud is legit. CJ Stroud is only going to get better. I don't know what the Houston Texans are going to become. And maybe you would say Deshaun Watson for a couple of years there was better than Dak. Yeah, I'll kind of go with that. But I never looked at the Texans with Deshaun Watson and never thought they were going anywhere. I watched CJ Stroud yesterday And I think they've got it. I would rather be the Houston Texans right now with CJ Stroud, and I'll take my chances and see what happens for the next 5 to 10 years than where the Cowboys are with Dak Prescott. Cowboys are going to be the better team this year. They're going to win like 10 or 11 games, but they are not getting past the conference semifinals. That is their ceiling. And I watched CJ Stroud now the last 2 weeks, and I keep thinking to myself, man, that guy might be a superstar in the making. And good for the Houston Texans. Like they for the first time, as a neutral observer, because I don't really care about the Texans. I'm really indifferent. Like, trust me, I know you Texans fans think we're still holding on to that first game in Texans history where the Texans beat the Cowboys and then we're supposed to be bitter about that for like the rest of our lives. Other than bringing it up occasionally on like a show, I never think about it. Like the Texans don't matter. So for them to matter, they've got to have something special. And I think CJ Stroud might just end up being special.
Man, first off, well laid out quarterback thoughts. People love quarterback thoughts. That's exactly where you should have gone. I'm glad you did, because I have absolutely no quarterback thoughts on the Cowboys side coming out of that game, Ketch. Do you know why? Because they gave up 28 to those Arizona Cardinals. 28. They gave up 7.7 per pass to those Arizona Cardinals. They gave up 7.4 per rush to those Arizona Cardinals. The moment Dak threw that interception, it officially meant the game was over. But that did not begin some kind of a rant for me on Dak Prescott.
I think Dak was worth his shit that entire game.
That defense gave up more explosive plays.
The whole team sucked yesterday.
Oh, it was bad.
They lost the Cardinals.
It was bad. But that defense giving up more explosives than what USC's opponents are giving up right now was a bit of the most frustrating part of it for me. But we'll just see where this team goes, because I don't know how it all fits together moving forward. All I know is they're 2-1, and the next 2 games are the Patriots and the Niners. Those are the next 2 football games they play. One's at home and one's on the road, if I'm not mistaken.
By the way, he had a 78 quarterback rating, and he averaged 6.2 yards per attempt.
Yeah,
I'm not saying he was the biggest problem, but
he wasn't great. Oh, you're right. He did not have a good game, and not many did. And the last 2 weeks, red zone stuff is coming around. They're going to have to figure that out. Mike McCarthy, new play caller again. He's got to figure that stuff out.
Look, we're going to beat the Patriots, and we're going to lose to the 49ers, and it'll be a 3-2 football team, and it'll be like, yeah.
And I have no idea if they're going to beat the Patriots. I don't know.
No, because they'll bounce back this week. Like that's what the Cowboys do. And then
what they do, yeah.
And then not us, but people will be like, they're back. Super Bowl is no.
They might beat the Niners by 10. All right,
stop doing it. Oh, God forbid they beat the Niners. It's almost like the worst thing that could happen. Because then they'll be on the talk shows left nonstop, and it'll be like, is this Cowboys team better than the 2001 Ravens? Like, you just start hearing these things where
the bottom line ends up being there was so much that team was trying to deal with yesterday, like being 2-0 and not getting overconfident, all those injuries. They just looked lifeless from the very beginning.
The Diggs thing took it out of that looked like a team whose head wasn't in the game. And I think the Diggs injury midweek did a number on them.
Yeah, they played like the last name of the corner that had to replace him. Bland. That's what they looked like. They just couldn't find themselves all day long. They just looked crestfallen. And even Parsons had the look of, I knew he had a couple plays because he's Micah Parsons. He had a couple freak dog plays, but just throughout that game when they would show Cowboys on the sidelines, Cowboys on the field, they just looked lifeless yesterday. So you have it.
That's part of the NFL, man.
Yes,
like
it happens. There's ups and downs. You just need, 2 out of every 3. be 2-1 out of every 3 games and see where you are by the end of it. We'll see where they are by the end of the season. So that's going to be a little bit of it. We won't get into a ton of Cowboy talk today, but since we are fans, we know many of you are Cowboys fans. If you are a fan of both circus tents, it really was a polarizing kind of weekend. Longhorns look amazing, and the Cowboys did not look amazing.
Hey, man, if it makes you feel any better, Liverpool won 3-1 yesterday. I was all right.
I was wondering. I had not checked the, what do they call it, a sheet? I had not checked the sheet yet to see what had happened. There it is. 0 days.
What the hell's a sheet?
Isn't that what they call it when you check the sheet for a soccer game? No.
You can keep a clean sheet.
Clean.
Which means you don't give up any goals.
Okay, but they don't refer to the whole stat thing as a sheet?
I've never heard that.
Okay, fair enough. I don't know all the terminology. It confuses me, so I'm just trying to learn.
I think you heard clean sheet and you thought stats.
Right, clean sheet. I thought clean sheet would tell me they always refer to it as a sheet.
Oh, they're looking at an actual piece of paper.
Sandman says, I need to check the sheep, Chad. There it is. There it is. See, I'm always ready to check the sheep, but the sheet, I didn't know if I should check. So it's just kind of a different thing. All right, we are across the 1 o'clock hour. We'll get into some more college football talk coming up. Texas, 3 in the country. How did the other teams do around them? We will get into it. It is about buy or sell time, though. Ketch, you want to go first or second today?
I'm going to let you go first because I have to make up my questions on the fly.
Well, you know.
And I really don't know why. Blake, no real reason today other than I just didn't think about it. So I want to make sure I don't double up on the questions that you ask.
Fair enough. All right, buy or sell number 1. The best thing about Texas right now for you is that defense.
Buy. It is the defense that made sure the Wyoming game wasn't an embarrassment. Because, if that was some previous years' defenses out there the day of the Wyoming game a couple of weeks ago. So I think it is the best part of this team right now. Now, you could get a little meta and say, well, no, the best thing is actually the completeness of the team and, the fact that there's multiple areas. I got you. They're really good. But the defense has been elite through the first third of the season is why, for me, they are the properly placed third-place team in the country in the Associated Press poll.
Yeah, they look great. Buy or sell number 2, Ketch. Your anger level during the Cowboys game was an 8 out of 10.
Oh, sell. I was like a 2, man.
Me too.
I had other than like an occasional, like, you almost to throw your hands up in the air of like, come on, guys. But anger, like I was in the proper amount of dismayed at times, or it was just like, really? Oh, come on. But like anger, it never got above a 1. I was never angry yesterday. Yeah. And honestly, when the game ended, I was like, what does that say about me as a Cowboys fan that just happened? Yeah. And anger wasn't one of my default emotions.
I know. I was with you. I was at about a 2 myself. Combined swears and alcoholic beverages was like at a 2, and they were mild swears. I didn't even drink during the game. That's how
I think I didn't swear once.
That's how not mad. Yeah. You just kind of.
That's what they've done to us, Chad.
No, I know.
They've just mooted us.
Exactly. Buy or sell number 3, Ketch. If they stay healthy, the Dolphins are going to the AFC Championship game or further.
Ooh, I so want to buy. That is, I wish I were a Dolphins fan. Can you imagine how much fun it is to and look, that fan base, they waited a long time to have a really good team that they could get excited about.
Yeah.
They're fun. And they embarrassed the living crap out of Sean Payton. They had players on Denver that were doing press obligations yesterday that were like, man, I can't remember who it was. You see the quote from the guy who was like, I've been here 7 years. Only thing I know is losing. And I was like, damn, dog. Like,
that's bad.
Like, they took their spirit and soul away from them yesterday and scoring 70 points. I'm going to buy.
Okay.
You said, if you just said Super Bowl, I don't know that I'd go that far.
Right. But
Because I think they still have to learn. It's really more of an NBA thing than an NFL team, but it does feel like you have to learn how to handle expectations and being a great team and doing it late in the year. And can Miami be Miami when the weather gets cold? Like, I think there are questions that they've got to clear, but I could easily see them in the AFC Championship game this year.
All right. Buy or sell number 4, Ketch. The best team that your eyes have seen so far in college football is Georgia.
Sell. The best team that I have seen, the team that I would rank number 1 in the country right now is the Washington Huskies. They are blowing people out. Blowing people out. What they've got going on offense right now is the standard that's being set in 2023 in college football. And I give them, it's weird. I know it was last year's game, but in a battle with Texas right now, I tend to give Washington a little benefit of a doubt in a one versus the other kind of side-by-side comparison. I'm giving them their proper due for the way they won that game last year. And I didn't even think they played an A-level game. That was like a B- performance for them, and give Texas some credit for that. But they were still winning that game by 3 scores in the fourth quarter. I think Washington should be the number 1 team in the country. And that they're not in the top 5 just shows you that pollsters, they don't vote on what's happening. They vote on what helmet decal they're looking at. They're looking at, historical pedigree and things like that. Nobody's playing better football right now than the Huskies, and nobody has a better quarterback. Well, USC does. Caleb Williams and Michael Penix Jr. are like on their own tier, and everybody else is chasing that.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch the Pac-12 this year, man. It's one last season of it, but there's going to be some incredible games coming up. And finally, Ketch, buy or sell number 5 in your 10 thoughts column. You said you're ready to dream big, so here we go. Texas goes 12-0.
I'm going to say sell, but I think it's very possible. And a couple of weeks ago, I was 9-3, not thinking 12-0 was possible. It's hard to go undefeated in college football. If it was easy, a lot of teams would do it. Doesn't happen. It happens maybe once or twice or 3 times by all of the teams in college football. It's really hard to do. Texas has a real chance, though. I think navigating these next 2 weeks is a big part of that. I think the best 2 quarterbacks on the schedule are probably the next 2. And then, if nothing else, the quarterback play that you playing against the rest of the season really dips back down to somewhere in between what you've been facing and what you just faced. So I think, I think, yes, dream big. I don't know that I would emphatically, though, say they're definitely going to do it.
Gotcha. All right. We are in the middle of buy or sell. Ketch, what do you got?
Buy or sell. Here's the question. All right, I'm going to ask you a question and then a sub question, okay? The sub question does not count as part of my primary question.
Okay.
But I have to ask the second part because it's the only thing that I've been able to think about. So,
all right.
Buy or sell number 1. Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift will date each other for the rest of 2023. Not necessarily exclusively. Like, I'm not saying exclusively. I'm just saying they will date each other. They'll make it to New Year's.
Man. I'll let the softy in me take over. Buy. I'll buy. Even though she's got the rest of that world tour coming up, he's going to be playing. A lot of things to deal with. I'll say buy.
All right. Sub question.
Yeah.
Because I see JD with T Swift and Kelce are only doing this for the PR side of things. He may be right. So here's my question. Buy or sell? This isn't part of my 5.
Okay.
T Swift and Travis Kelce will have sex together. I've not been able to think about much else for the last 24 hours. I've seen him in commercials, and I'm like, is he really her type? And then I'm like, he's a massive man. Has Taylor Swift ever been down with a guy as big as as Travis Kelce? Like, he's a man mountain. And then I'm thinking, well, they're eventually going to break up. But if they have sex, is the bar like, it'd be like dating Jason Momoa. You know what I mean? Like, at some point.
Wow. That's a huge compliment to Kelce.
Yes, he's like that kind of guy.
My
And I
God.
feel like if Taylor Swift were to engage in relations with Travis Kelce, then it would be a game changer for her.
I'm going to buy.
Oh, good for you, Travis. Good for you.
I'm going
He
to buy.
shot his shot, man. He like willed that to happen.
I'm going to buy, and I'm going to say it's good for both.
Buy or sell. I told you that couldn't count as my question.
What? That's fine.
But it was in my head.
Okay.
And I'm sorry. I know that not all of you like the questions, but I had to ask it. Buy or sell. Number 2, Jonathan Brooks is the starting running back for every game the remainder of the season.
Let's see. 8 games left. Every game every game they play is the starting. I'm just going to say bye. I'm going to give 24 the love and say bye. I understand what Sarkisian's been talking about, and I understand that Baxter's going to give him some stuff, but I'm going to say it's going to be Brooks and then Baxter playing off of that. I don't think Brooks is going to lose the job.
Buy or sell. Number 3. Someone's calling into question my comment about Travis Kelce being a man mountain. He's a big dude, man. I don't know what you guys, I mean, he's not like Shaquille O'Neal, but
he is a big dude. Yes.
Big dude.
Only thing I'm pushing back on is the Momoa comparison, but I'm sure Kelce would enjoy that.
You don't think he's as physically imposing as Momoa?
I'm just saying the overall package is not.
Jason I agree with you there. I'm not saying, I'm just saying from like a bulk.
Just big. You're saying from a
he's 6'5", 250.
Right.
Guys, if you don't think 6'5", 250 is a mountain man, what mountain are you going to?
Yeah, that's true. That's like Vince. I mean, that's a big dude.
He's a big dude.
A big human. You're right.
All right. Buy or sell. What was my last question? I forgot.
Jonathan Brooks.
Oh, buy or sell. Number 3. You saw the Cowboys game yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
You're back to thinking they can't challenge the Eagles for the division.
Buy. Yeah. After yesterday, it's a reminder that a wild card is probably going to be where they land, because I've watched the Eagles win a couple times where they were kind of clunky, but their clunky is better than the Cowboys clunky. So yes, I have to give the Eagles the deference. I hope tonight I am very wrong, because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are facing those Eagles, but I'll go with the Eagles right now.
Buy or sell. Number 4, Jalen Hurts' record in his last 20 games as a starter is 19-1. And that, Chad, makes you want to throw up.
Bye. Absolute bye. And I'm hoping after tonight it's 19-2. Come on, Baker Mayfield. What do you got? It's rare that Cowboys fans might all turn into Baker Mayfield fans at once, but it will happen this evening in this Monday night game. It's incredible. It's incredible what's happened with Jalen Hurts. The whole, the whole Brock Purdy thing in San Francisco is frustrating enough as a Cowboys fan, but to combine those two things, to combine the Purdy stuff in Frisco and the Eagles stuff with Hurts, it's remarkable NFL coaching and adapting, and it's all smacking the Cowboys right in the face. Drives me crazy.
Buy or sell. Number 5, you saw my 10 thoughts from the weekend, and you scanned all the way down to section 10, and you saw my list of top 10 American rock bands of all time, and you chuckled strongly at the Eagles being ranked at number 1.
Sell. I chuckled strongly, but it had nothing to do with the Eagles being at number 1. There's an argument for that. There's an argument for, in fact, there's a decent argument for your top 3. I thought there were some things I would rearrange or a discussion I would have, but the Eagles didn't make me laugh. No, they're a monster. Dude, they're a monster American rock band. I mean, I know the Lebowski vibe, and some people just hate them or whatever. But if you put it all together, the key ingredients, the Eagles have a hell of a resume. So no, I wasn't laughing.
Are you one of these guys that doesn't think the Beach Boys is a rock band?
No, I'm not one of those. And even though I'm not the biggest Beach Boys fan in the world, I think there's an argument for there. I'm not, is it number 2? I'm not sure, but there's an argument to have them on the list. Absolutely.
They get bonus points for being like spiritual rivals of the Beatles.
Well, they're just, there's a far-reaching quality to the Beach Boys.
They're like the inspiration of so many people.
Absolutely, yeah. The inspiration, the quality of it, the timelessness of the music. I had forgotten about the Beach Boys and having that discussion. I felt kind of silly when I saw your list, and I went, "Oh yeah, the Beach Boys. Of course, you have to put the Beach Boys in that discussion." Absolutely.
What made you chuckle? I'm just curious.
Metallica shouldn't be on the list to me.
You don't think Metallica should be on the list?
No, because they're not a rock band. You can't. You gotta be more focused in on than that. They were a metal band that became a hard rock band. But just like I wouldn't have AC/DC in this discussion, Metallica just doesn't need to be in the discussion.
I mean, AC/DC's Australian, so they couldn't be in the discussion.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. But if they were American, AC/DC shouldn't be in the discussion to me. It's hard rock. It's just a different game that
if playing. You're ranking rock bands and you're telling me one is hard rock.
No, I get where you're going, but then you'd have to then you're expanding the discussion a little bit, and it gets.
And I put Guns N' Roses in, like I felt like I included Nirvana's in there. They're not really a rock band in the sense of a rock band.
Right. Nirvana was in. There was some, I thought you gave a lot of credit to some longevity in some cases, but then you also gave credit to some short runs in other cases. It was just there were some kind of different arguments being made. I thought Aerosmith, Van Halen, and Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers all got a little screwed on your list too.
Interesting. All in the top 10.
All in the top 10.
See it.
All too low.
Some people thought I gave Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers too much credit.
Oh, that's silly.
Because the Heartbreakers just weren't part of the full Tom Petty experience. A little bit like the Revolution, with Prince.
That's silliness. He had like one major album that was a solo record. Everything else is Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
I'm just telling you, there were a lot of Chicago lovers too, at which I wasn't prepared for that.
That's a tough one as well. I'm not the biggest Chicago fan, but there's a historic argument there. And then after my experience seeing Pearl Jam was nowhere to be found on your list. I thought that was interesting. I think the Pearl Jam over Nirvana argument can be made as well.
You made the Pearl Jam argument for me. All-time great frontman, not all-time great band.
I never said that.
I thought you said that when you watched them in concert.
No. I mean, he's a badass rock star, just the way like you put Bruce Springsteen in the E Street Band up there. When you go see Bruce Springsteen in the E Street Band, I'm assuming you come out of it going, man, Bruce Springsteen's awesome. And he's a big time rock star. And then the band is the band. But no, I'm not dogging Pearl Jam as a band. Historically, I think they need more love than Nirvana. That'd be my argument.
Okay. And one last thought, guys, stop with the ZZ Top stuff. They had like 3 great albums from 73 to 83. And we've been listening to like the same songs. Not that we don't do that with a lot of bands, but ZZ Top's not top 10. Only people living in Texas think ZZ Top is a top 10. Like,
yeah, that's
top 10, guys. Come on.
As a Texan, I feel bad that maybe I didn't even think of them in the discussion, but you're probably right. I'd go like top 15 or 20, maybe with ZZ Top. The basics of it are one thing, but they carved out a hell of a career. But I agree with you. I wouldn't make them top 10.
Great with synthesizers, though, in the 80s.
Oh, when they found that sound, people bought the hell out of it. They bought the crap out of it.
But then to that point, I would say after like the big album, not another great one after that. I'm just saying, I did the ZZ Top experience where in a week I listened to every ZZ Top album. And this isn't a popular thing to share. People won't like this, but I came away like thinking they were overrated. Yeah, listening to the entire library, I was like, guys, come on. Let's do something original here. This is.
And hey, That the other thing I would tell people, if you ever check out Ketch's 10 Thoughts and you get to that list at the end, the top 10 list, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, my mom, I disagree, and I can't believe he did this. I've had those feelings, but knowing him as long as I have, the man puts his work in. The man puts his work in. He does the work. He does the research. So
I promise, I've listened to every ZZ Top album ever made.
Yeah.
And Eliminator is an all-time banger. It is.
Oh, it is, definitely.
It's an all-time banger. But top 10, I just couldn't quite go there. Okay.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion, though. It's one of my favorite musical discussions, the American rock band thing. It just depends on who you're asking, too. I know people that would be all about the beginning of your list. I know people that would, like me, would argue at the end of your list, but everybody loves to talk American rock bands. It's a great conversation.
All right, well, let's get back to talking Longhorns before we drive people crazy.
We can do that. Longhorns definitely drove Baylor crazy, 38-6. By the end of the game, Texas is 4-0, and they are 3 in the country once again. What is this? Super chat $9.99 from Bernsey, as Dr. Nick says on The Simpsons. Hi, everybody. All right, there you go. Did I get that one right? Hi, everybody. I've never thought of doing him. So the rankings coming out of the week, Texas State at number 3. Florida State slipped to 5. Ketch, would you have
punished for beating Clemson?
Would you have done? I was going to ask you, would you have done that with Ohio State? Go 2 slots up for the way they beat Notre Dame, and then punish Florida State, kicking them down to 5. Is that how you saw the weekend?
No, Florida State's being punished for playing in a couple of close games, and maybe that's fair. They still have the best win of anybody in the country. They bashed LSU's brains in. And you know, I think we could quibble if somebody wanted to say Texas winning at Alabama, because I think Alabama is rightfully 10, 11-ish. I think that's kind of where they should be. You know, I won't argue that. I mean, I'll accept that winning at Alabama. But, man, Florida State dominated LSU. I think it's been a month now, and so we're kind of forgetting –
right.
Just how like one-sided that game was. And LSU's winning games. I don't know that LSU's great either, but
that's helping the Florida State argument that LSU fought their way out of that Arkansas game. You know, they got the win. So they're back up to, what are they, 11 or 12 this week?
Yeah.
They're back. Yeah, they're up to 13. Bama's at 12. They're at 13. So very comparable there. Texas beats the number 12 team on the road, and Florida State beat the number 13 team in a neutral game to start the year. But you're right. It's still a great win. And then the Clemson win on the road. Think whatever you want about Dabo and Clemson. I get it. They're not elite. But when you pair that with LSU, to me, it should give Florida State a little bit more love than they're getting. Ohio State gets the love for Notre Dame. But you brought up a good point earlier. Washington, they're getting credit in a way. They got 1 first place vote. They're up a spot to number 7. But Ketch, you can feel the AP voters saying, we're going to wait. We are going to wait on this team and their schedule. Because if you look at what Washington has played and you look at what Washington is going to play, it's 2 completely different stories. Like, Washington has played garbage so far. They have not played a football team yet. But, Ketch, they're going to play Oregon at home, at USC, Utah at home. So, the
Pac-12, week in and week out, for as much as we joke about the Pac-12 and the Pac-2 and football on the West Coast,
yeah,
we're going to be depending on the Pac-12 some weeks to give us our entertainment, because they have right now legitimately like 5 teams that, I mean, you're talking Washington, USC, Oregon,
and Utah.
And that doesn't even include Oregon State and Washington State, who are both top 20 right now. I mean,
yeah, the first 4 you named are 7, 8, 9, and 10. The other 2 are ranked. I mean, it's going to be such a great gauntlet to watch, and the Pac-12 is going to, consume itself throughout the season. We'll see who's left, but it's amazing to look. USC, they play Utah and Washington at home, and they go to Oregon and Notre Dame before the season's over. Oregon's going to go to Washington. Utah's going to go to Washington. I mean, all these different combos. And like you said, that doesn't even factor in Washington State and Oregon State, who just had a pretty decent game, and Washington State looked good. I mean, there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of fun. Heck, Friday night is Utah, Oregon State.
Let's do it.
I mean, this Friday, and it's in Corvallis, if I'm not mistaken. This is why I love this stuff, Ketch. I'm going to love it even more next year when we get to a real playoff. But in this last pageant year, we're really going to be watching everybody's little place in it, and how you get knocked down and how you step back up. And these AP voters, again, 3 of them think Florida State's the best team in the country. That's a little crazy to me, but you've made the argument of why that could be. If you just go on a certain criteria, then they could be the number 1 team. I'm still amazed that 55 of those voters are going Georgia. Like, they can't do anything else, Ketch, but pick Georgia. 55 out of that number.
See, you noticed the 55, but the thing that I noticed was that 6 teams received first place votes.
And that is abnormal. Like, it is. Because
it's abnormal for almost the end of the first month of the season, right? I mean, you wouldn't think that that's necessarily crazy in a preseason poll. Everybody's got 1 or 2 guys that just think that team's going to be great or whatever. But that we're a month in, and 6 of the top, I don't even think it's like the top 6. I think it might be 6 of the top 8 have first place votes. I think it speaks to how interesting of a college football season we're about to see. And look, you mentioned Washington hasn't played anybody yet. And I would say they tried. I mean, there's some years Boise, I bet when they set the Boise State game up, they thought that'll be a good game.
Yeah.
Then they squeezed in Michigan State. They probably thought that's got a chance to be a top 25 kind of level matchup.
Yeah, they didn't know my man couldn't use the telephone properly.
They haven't tried to go out of their way to avoid playing anybody, but and this is their month of November. At number 8 USC, home against number 10 Utah, at number 19 Oregon State, home against number 16 Washington State.
That's so good. Yeah, man. How about I don't know if this is the last Apple Cup. I haven't heard those discussions, but if it is, wow. If this is the last Apple Cup, if this is the last Civil War, if this is the last combos of all of it, what a finish. What a ride this is going to be for the Pac-12 schools. If you're a Texas fan, you just keep handling your business. You hope you're putting together a good, solid resume, obviously starting with these next couple weeks, and then you see where you finish out. And like we've said, as long as Texas doesn't lose, you don't have to worry about any of the rest of it. But if you do slip once, then you got to start worrying about how things are being chopped up out west. But I would tell people to get their coffee, Ketch. Just get stocked up on your coffee. You're also going to get some more 2:30 kicks. You're also going to get some more 6 o'clock kicks because these teams are good, but get ready to stay up. These teams are so much fun. The quarterbacks are great. The schemes are unbelievable. At some places, the defenses are unbelievable too. Utah will put you in a vice grip and try to snap every bone in your body if you let them do it. What they did to UCLA was borderline criminal behavior if they did it in a movie. I mean, it was so physical what they pulled off. And I'm just interested to see all of that play out. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's incredible stuff out west.
You think there's an obvious fraud in college football right now? Like inside the top 10, is there anybody that you look at and just think, give me a break? They're not that good.
Penn State.
Wow, you said that fast.
That's the first one that jumps out. I just looked at the list as you were starting your sentence. The fraud to me can always be Penn State. They just beat Iowa. Okay. I feel like Penn State's one of those teams that they'll win one of those whiteout games. They get knocked up. Iowa was ranked going into the game. Why? Not sure. But it's Penn State.
Can you imagine watching Iowa offense every week?
No. And I watched the A&M offense, and I watched Jimbo Fisher's offense the last 2 years. I cannot imagine.
Even A&M fans are blushing like, whoa, guys, come on now.
I mean, easy now. Come on. Yeah, so right now, the possible one is Penn State. What about you?
USC.
Really?
Look, okay. I love Caleb Williams. but they're trash on defense. And they're going to be all season long the team that some people might have thought Texas was going to be, a high wire act. 40 points on any given night, but might find themselves in a 45-42 game that brings down the season. I watched USC on Saturday night when we finished up our post-game responsibilities here on Orange Bloods Live. By the way, you can go back and check out the Pint House, watch along. That was fun. And by all means, check out the Lowy Law Firm post-game show if you didn't see those from over the weekend. Like I said, there were some interesting bits in those, including our exclusive interview with Dave Aranda in the post-game show. It was amazing stuff. And amazingly candid Dave Aranda in our post-game show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A little more rotund than people remember when they saw him on the
more
sideline.
hair too, if you look closely. It's like
okay.
maybe he was wearing a toupee. It was a very strange thing. So I look at USC and I think they could have when I say Caleb Williams is the opposite of a fraud, but I see a USC team that I think is going to lose a couple of games before their season is over. Although that might be true of everybody in the Pac-12. I think really strong league, but going undefeated this year in the Pac-12 means you're going through a lot of really good quarterbacks. Bo Nix looked, I don't know what to completely think of Oregon. I'm not going to make too much out of the destruction of Colorado, but it was emphatic. I mean, I thought that game might end up being like 52-33 or something like that all week long to basically shut Colorado completely out of that game.
Oh my God.
Was really impressive, but it's just, you look at Texas. I wrote about this in my column. If you're Texas, you're 4 of your 8 games remaining, your 4 toughest games, according to the Associated Press poll: OU on a neutral field, Kansas at home, Kansas State at home, TCU on the road.
Mm-hmm.
On paper, those are the only 4 teams that Texas plays the rest of the year that even got a vote in the AP poll. And 2 of those teams are ranked, but only one of your opponents is ranked in the top 15 the rest of the way. Whereas, look, if we just look at Oregon, they're at Washington in a couple of weeks, number 7. Then they're at home against Washington State, number 16. Then they're at number 10, Utah. Then they have a game at home against number 8, USC. And then they end the season at home against Oregon State. So of their final 8 games of the season, they're playing 5 ranked teams, but they're playing 3 in a row coming up pretty quickly. 2 of those are on the road. They're playing good. And what does Utah look like if they ever get Cameron Rising back?
Yeah. Exactly. He had to be able to have a little bit of offense. And remember, they just won a game 14-7 where they had a pick 6 on the first play. First play of the game was a pick 6, and they won it 14-7.
But I give them credit, man. They're finding ways to win. You said it. We're going to learn. It's a top 10 matchup on I'm sorry. I clicked on the wrong deal. Who do they play this? What's the Friday night game again? It's
Oregon
Utah.
State.
Who?
Yeah.
That's right.
Not quite a top 10 matchup.
It's a top 20 matchup. That's a good Friday night game, though. Blake in the super chat says Sark and Mike Norville were both 5-7 in 2021. Now they're both top 5 teams. Is this cause NIL or better recruiting? Well, I would say in the case of Mike Norvell, it's because of the portal. They've been as aggressive in the portal as not include Deion's in his own category. If you take Deion Sanders in Oregon out of the way, what Florida State has done in the portal is the key to their success. Yeah. So I wouldn't say that them and Sark have that thing in common. And no, Florida State isn't regarded as an NIL superpower.
Right.
That's not their reputation. I'm not telling you they're like bankrupt or anything, but Texas is a legit, and they picked up a commitment from a kid in Brandon Baker and Chad, I can appreciate this so much. That kid came out, didn't hide it at all. People were like, is NIL going to be a part of your decision? And he was like, yep. And not only will it be a part of my decision, it might be the most important part. I love that he said it. Let's just keep it real.
Right.
And he did. And that Texas, and look, that kid, a lot of people thought Brandon Baker. We didn't really get into this in the Brandon Baker discussion. By the way, Adam Gorney from Rivals.com will join us in 40 minutes. But, okay. Apparently, Chad, my audio is out of sync.
Uh-oh. All right.
I will return. Hold down the fort for a moment.
Okay. All right. A little in and out needed from Ketch, if you know what I mean. And I think you do, because it's Orange Bloods Live. Thank you, Blake, for that super chat. An interesting discussion there with NIL. Yeah, during Florida State Clemson, they threw a stat up on the screen, and I want to say it was like 20 or 30, was it maybe even as many as 31, 28, 31 or something for Florida State. And then they put a little graphic on the other side of Dabo, like guarding the door, and it said 0. And I thought, yeah, that kind of tells us a lot about that. Interesting stuff around the country, and we'll continue to discuss that today. Thank you to over 400 folks, almost 430 in the Specs super chat, Specs chat today, and we love those super chats. If you want to get us those, we've got crap bag coming up. We'll get into a little Kelsey and Swift talk, but also some House Divided performances. We'll talk some crazy NFL stats. I got a couple birthdays I want to hit as well, and we will get that. Texas guy, too, a little freaked out for a second when I was just me, but see, Ketch is back. It's good. We good there? Blake, how we looking? Yes? All right, we're getting the thumbs up. There you go. So those of you that were scared that it was just me, wasn't just me for very long, was it? They were freaking out.
I appreciated the in and out joke that you made just on the way as I was exiting stage left. That was fantastic.
There you go. The quick in and out. There it is.
Ben, we haven't talked about Taylor Swift in like 20 minutes. Come on, man.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, it's true. And it won't be a lot. Won't be a whole lot. I'm just going to take, I may take an angle on that thing that others wouldn't take at 2:00. And we'll get into that, but there's definitely some other football stuff in there. I think if you're a Longhorn fan, and if you're an Aggie fan for that matter, you'll want to be around for the crap bag. We'll get into a lot of that stuff. We're talking college football. If you want to jump in on the Specs chat, please do. Obviously, the big focus for us today, Texas, the number 3 team in the country, 38-6. The Sark presser today. Ketch, you mentioned earlier there wasn't a whole lot of injury talk coming out of it, and I think that was, that's great news. Last week, there were a couple injuries that were 3 or 4 week injuries. So there was no need to update those. 1 offensive lineman, 1 defensive lineman. And it doesn't feel like there's a need to update Baxter because he played in the game and it wasn't even asked today. There was a running back question, but there's really no injury issues. So knock on wood if you're a Texas fan there as they get ready for Kansas. But it's a pretty healthy football team. It certainly was a confident team in Waco. And man, they handled their business plus a lot. While everybody was focused on, is Notre Dame going to hold Ohio State, and why don't they have 11 guys on the field and all that stuff, Texas was just pounding Baylor and leaving no doubt, and in a nice 32-point win, almost 5 full touchdowns, victory. It was impressive stuff, and now we'll see what they do with a tougher part of conference.
One of the surprising things about the aftermath of the Baylor game is how on tilt Baylor people are. I'm shocked at who they think they are versus who they really are. I mean, I watched a Baylor fan do a video last night where he was ready to chase Aranda out the door.
Really?
And, I mean, I will admit Dave Aranda looks like a lost coach. I don't know. Thing is, if you're bad, but you're young or you're growing up with a young quarterback and maybe that guy gets hurt and I know they're playing the backup, but I don't see the vision of where that team is going. Although he said after the game, and maybe the most myopic answer to a question involving a losing coach saying they were going to have this team. He said his team has the talent and ability to make it to the Big 12 championship game, which I hadn't heard a coach sound that myopic in saying that since Steve Sarkisian said that in 2021 after losing to Oklahoma and then going 5-7. So, but man, I was a little shocked that Baylor fans are so out on Aranda. I find myself today wondering, did Texas get Dave Aranda fired? Like, not, it ain't going to happen, I think, in the middle of the season, but did that win? And look, Baylor fans were like, God, he let Texas beat us like Texas used to beat us. I heard that and thought that was funny. I actually heard a Baylor person say, maybe it was appropriate that Texas beat us like that, since over the course of 120 years, it mostly went that way. But he was like, but I'm a young guy. That didn't happen in my lifetime. So to see that happen the way that it did, Baylor fans just had their jimmies rustled. And I thought, they were playing the number 3 team in the country. I just don't know what they expected.
Well, that's a fair question. And because they've had such weird ups and downs lately, you go back to the start of the 2010s, all those up moments that they had with Bryles, and now it's come back down. Aranda does the amazing job a couple of years ago. I keep going back to the thing we discussed, though, with Aranda, just like we discussed it with Dabo, Ketch. And when you were resetting there, I mentioned the Dabo stat that they threw up during the Florida State-Clemson game. All those guys that Florida State got in the transfer portal, and they made a graphic with Dabo guarding the door. Did you see that? Guarding the door.
Shades on. Yeah,
with the shades on, guarding the door like he's the bouncer. And there was a big 0 there. We talked about Dabo, and then closer to home, we talked about Aranda. And you went the extra level with him where they got the advantage out of the portal in some cases, but then he fought back against it later, and he just feels like a guy that is going to stand firm on, like, this is how we do it, and we're going to do it our way, and we're going to do it with our people, and we're going to do it with guys that want to be here, and we don't need to worry about all of that. I wonder, to me, that's insanity at a place like Baylor. But are we already seeing that part of it? Or is it that and a whole lot more? But, having said that, we are watching. The real part of it is we watched, like you said, it's the backup quarterback. They're banged up at running back and all that stuff. But, yeah, they didn't feel it. It did feel old school in the way that when I used to get to mid-third quarter watching Texas play Baylor, I just knew Baylor had no shot.
Yeah.
And that's what it felt like Saturday night.
Well, and you pushed up against it a little bit, even in the watch along, where I said that game was over at 14-3. And I think your smart football brain said, well, no, catch it of one play and it's a 4-point game again. And, let's wait and see. And I was like, no, they're atrocious on offense. Nope. And there's just no way. You could look at Texas and know they were going to at least be in the 30s. How's Baylor going to score that many points? The only way that game was going to be close is if they played a Wyoming-type game. They couldn't. And Baylor just Texas just steamrolled Baylor, and that's the way it's going to be. I think one of the things I like so about a year ago, I was having a conversation with one of my key sources on the Texas side of things. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about the portal, and we were talking about Sarkisian in the portal, and Sarkisian instinctively prefers high school kids. If all things were equal, and they're not, but if they were, I think he would only recruit high school kids and not go into the portal. And when I talked to one of my key sources back when the 2022 class was being pieced together, that's just the way he's kind of instinctively wired. And I remember thinking, I was pretty public in saying this, he better change that. Better change. Because that's like going into a gunfight with a knife and then being surprised when you get shot. If you're not going to do any of that, and other teams are beefing up their rosters with good, proven players, I bring that up because I had a conversation with the same source earlier this month as the one, same source as the one from 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking about the portal, and he indicated to me, oh yeah, Sark will be in the portal. Like, he gets it.
Right.
Saw the Florida State game. He's seen the way even his own program has been able to use the portal with an Adonai Mitchell, even a Ryan Sanborn at punter. You think about Quinn Ewers, Ryan Watts. I mean, if the Longhorns make it to the playoff, we'll be able to look back and say the portal played a massive role, because without the portal, Quinn Ewers doesn't play last season, so maybe he doesn't even transfer, right? I mean, guys transfer now because they don't have to wait that year to transfer. Ironically, our weekly guest, Brian Jones, is probably the most before the last few years. I mean, I think you would say Brian Jones was the most prominent transfer to come to Texas in the last 40 years. I mean, who else would it even be?
Right.
Now you're looking, even when Herman was here, he was pulling in the Calvin Andersons and, the occasional grad transfer that helped, but wasn't like a true difference maker. I mean, this team now is full of starters that week in and week out are making big plays. And I think next year, there's a conversation that we're going to have, maybe not today, but it will be like, how many guys off this Texas team get drafted? And we start looking at, is 2024 going to be a rebuilding year to some degree? And the answer to that is probably yes. I mean, this is a team that I think is going to, again, we don't have to go too deep into this, but I think Texas probably has double-digit guys drafted in next year's NFL draft.
Mm-hmm.
But I've already heard, don't be shocked if they go into the portal and get a tight end. I don't know if they know who that guy is yet, but this is a team that plays a ton of 12 personnel. They play a ton of 2 tight ends on the field at all time. And if Jatavion Sanders is gone and Gunnar Helm is the only thing that remains, they're going to go into the portal for a tight end. I think they're going to go into the portal for another wide receiver. I wouldn't be surprised if you see them go into the portal and replace Ryan Sanborn with another transfer portal guy at the punting position. I think Sarkisian's eyes have been opened up to, you know what? We're better because of Adonai Mitchell. We're better because of the transfers that we brought in. We don't need to bring in 12, but if we bring in 5 at key areas of our team, and then that improves our team, then I'm silly for not doing that. Chad, I thought it was interesting that when he mentions the Kansas defensive line, he said, it's not even a 3-man defensive line. It's a 10-man defensive line. And he said, and all of those guys came from the portal.
Yeah.
All of them.
He gave, as part of giving Leipold credit for what he's done at Kansas. He made transfer portal a big part of it. Yeah. To ignore that today makes no sense. Like last year's Georgia team, I believe, is technically had no transfers. Correct. I think that's the last one. I don't know that we'll ever see, unless if it's going to have to be Kirby. It's going to be Kirby or Saban or somebody at the very tip top elite level that's already crushing all those 5-star classes and everything. But yeah, you just don't feel like that's going to be a norm. And somebody sent a great chat here that kind of throws it together. Text guy too. Portal plus NIL plus Sark/flood equals success. Those are certainly, ingredients to it. And yeah, they've done a great job there. And that's back to the whole, downside of on the Baylor discussion. That would make me wonder if I'm a Baylor fan.
I think going into the future, it used to be, can a guy recruit? And it still will be. Like, it's one of the reasons why I think a guy like Tashard Choice will one day be a college head coach, because, man, that guy can recruit. But with coaches that have head coaching experience, more than can they recruit, are they good in the portal? We were already seeing it in college basketball. I mean, that's what made Chris Beard, among a lot of things, really attractive to Texas. It was like, the name of the game in college basketball right now is the portal. Why not go get the guy that does the portal better than anybody else? I mean, there's a new conversation to have about Chris Beard, but pre-last season, you would just point to what he did in the portal and go, that guy's worth his weight in gold because he does that in the portal. It was one of the questions that you would have had, in Texas making the change that it did at the head basketball coaching position. Can Rodney Terry do anywhere near the same level of recruitment in the portal? And he's done a really good job in this offseason to kind of ease those concerns that it was just a Chris Beard thing, that maybe Rodney Terry couldn't do that. I think moving forward, if you're a team looking to make a hire, I don't know why more teams aren't high on Lance Leipold from Kansas. And I think his work in the portal is like a big part of that. Yeah. I mean, if I'm at Michigan State right now, like that's got to be part of the answer. Is like if I'm one of these schools that's in one of the major conferences, I think the guy can coach his butt off, and the guy knows how to spot talent and bring it into the portal. It is the quickest way for a team to get good really fast in college football. And if you're not doing that, Clemson, Baylor, although again, Baylor doesn't win a Big 12. I don't even know how Aranda puts himself into a position where he thinks that he should stay away from the portal when he doesn't win the Big 12 championship in 2021 without the portal. Ironically, one of their big offensive line transfers came in from Buffalo when Leipold left to go to Kansas. Like, there's some sliding doors moments there where if he stays at Buffalo and they don't have a mass exit of transfers, then maybe Aranda doesn't win the Big 12 championship in 2021. They had that big defensive lineman from LSU that was the anchor of their defense for 2 years. And then to somehow come out of that going, yeah, I haven't been taking any I don't even know how he allowed that narrative to get out there because he looks like a damn fool. And, if someone wanted to call out Aranda and say, why aren't you doing portal stuff? I would be reminding people left and right, well, I can do the portal stuff. We just haven't. He was telling people they haven't like they never had. And it looked like it. Like that looked like a team, Chad. And look, they're not better than Kansas. Why are they not better than Kansas? Because KU's done a better job of evaluating talent in the portal and then getting it to their campus. They're going to lose this weekend to Texas. I don't think Kansas is that, but they're a good team. They're a good outfit. A year or two ago, certainly even a year ago, I would have said they're a Jalen Daniels kind of led football team. But I watched a lot of that BYU game. They're really well coached. I mean, you could just see that playing BYU. It just felt like they were doing all of the right things, calling the right plays, being in the right spots. I'm impressed with their offensive personnel. And yes, I think they've got arguably the best quarterback in the Big 12 in Jalen Daniels. When he's on, he's sensational. And we'll look back at the last few years of Alabama, and I think post Bryce Young, whatever's left of Nick Saban's career, we may say they squandered because they didn't do the thing that USC has done and Texas has done and Notre Dame has done. I mean, teams are going into the portal and getting quarterbacks and getting great quarterbacks. Yeah. And somehow Alabama, of all programs, became the school that in a game of musical chairs was like the first one out. And it doesn't completely make sense because everybody else, how does Alabama not go get that kid from Wake Forest that's now at Notre Dame? How did that happen? Like, if you're Alabama, don't you just put your rings on the table and say, we need a quarterback and look what we'll do if we have one? I'm surprised that happened. And I think it will be ironic if in the end, all of the superpower teams that Nick Saban has had over the years, he still has the most super blue chip talent of any coach in the country and any roster in the country. And yet it feels like they're missing something. And the thing that they're missing is the most important position on the field.
Before we hit the top of the hour here, we'll use this chat to get you a reminder. If you haven't heard it today, Julio, buy or sell, college game day goes to Dallas if both Texas and OU win this Saturday. I scanned that Saturday's games. I think that's a buy.
Yeah.
I'm going to buy that. I think that's a pretty easy one. And by the way, it is an 11 a.m. kick officially. In case you missed that today, it did become official. 11 a.m. on October 7th. Texas and Oklahoma. If Texas wins, they'll stay in the top 5. If Oklahoma wins, they're at 16 this week. They play Iowa State, if I'm not mistaken. Ketch, it's Iowa State this week. Yeah. In Norman, if they get that win, that doesn't give them a ton, but maybe they get to move up a little bit. So probably a top 15 matchup. I think that is where game day would go. So
yeah, no, I'm with you for the reasons that you've outlined. You and I both said it. Let's just say it again. I said this off the air when me and Blake were talking, but it's so racist. And like this idea that they can't play the game at the Cotton Bowl ever. It's got to be 11 a.m. or even 2:30 seems to give people the squeamish feels.
I was begging for the 2:30, but that does mean, Ketch, you might have to be walking to your car as it's getting dark.
It's so ridiculous that this notion exists that like mass criminal activity is going to take. It's so racist to just say we can't go to the Cotton Bowl. You know what? You know what ethnic the background is for that neighborhood at night, and it's like it's where the state fair is. I'm just telling you. If you told me right now, Ketch, you can take your 2 9-year-old kids to a game at night at the Cotton Bowl or a game at night at Jerry World when the Cowboys are playing, where would you go? I'm going to the Cotton Bowl every day and twice on Sundays. Do you know? I'm fearful of going to NFL games in Jerry World because the walk back to your car is just terrible. There's fights. There's drunks. There's just people who look like the absolute bottom of the barrel filth of the human population. I've never felt that way ever at the Cotton Bowl, ever. I've parked in people's yards. I've done everything you can do. I've been at the Cotton Bowl. I've been at the fair late at night. I've never felt unsafe. And I cannot believe the idea, Chad, of that game getting anywhere close to prime time, it's never even happened.
No. Oh, no. I mean, there have been a couple of 2:30s mixed in. You heard me in our conversations the last couple of weeks. I've just been begging for the 2:30, and there's a couple personal reasons why, but I just hope for it for the fans because I've watched that game when it's a 2:30, and it feels so much more normal. You get up. You get to have normal drinks and eats and all that. When it's 11 a.m., it just feels so rushed. And you're forcing one of those fan bases to lose the game. And then it's like, hey, do you want to go enjoy the fair? No, I don't want to enjoy the fair. We just lost the game. I'm going to go get me a corn dog on the way out, and I'm getting the hell out of here. Because that's how it works.
I just can't believe that in 2023 that game can't be played at night. And there's no good reason. There's none. The first reason every time is this idea that somehow it's dangerous. I'm just telling you, every time I go to and I don't even go to Cowboy games anymore, because if you go to them, on the way out, it's just embarrassing every time. And every time I've gone, I've thought, can't bring kids to this. I don't want my kids to be around all of this obnoxious behavior and the fighting and the language. And yet when I'm at the Cotton Bowl, even when it's a Texas OU game, I never think to myself, can't have kids around here. It's just, anyway, rant over.
I know.
You go into the crap bag, but it's an 11 a.m. kickoff. That game should be played in prime time.
Yeah, one of these days, I wish they would, but they will not do it in 2023. So the big matchup, it'll be Texas's first 11 a.m. kick, maybe their last 11 a.m. kick if things go like they need to this year. So Texas and OU will be 11 a.m. Coming up at 2:20, we will talk to Adam Gorney of Rivals about the big Brandon Baker story from yesterday, recruiting in general. We'll get into that discussion at 2:20. Since we have gone over that 2 o'clock hour spot, let's jump into the crap bag with a couple of things. First off, there was a lot of talk, obviously, yesterday about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift. This got a lot of discussion in my house because I am the father of a Swiftie. So this is a big deal. And she admitted it to us yesterday. She's the one that told us, hey, guys, she's at the Chiefs game. She's been very protective of her T-Swizzle and thinking, wait a minute, I don't want to admit this could be going on. But she was at the game, and then we'd verified that it was Kelsey's mom that she was with. Here's something I want to remind everybody of, because I'm a believer that these big-time relationships can actually last and work. Everybody likes to make fun of them, and they're never going to last, and blah, blah, blah. It's all fake. They're not doing it for the right reasons. Keep in mind that Travis Kelce is 33 years old. He is only about 2 months older than Taylor Swift. Taylor's rep has been dating guys older than her. And it has always kind of been one of the things that she's been into. I wonder if this is somebody, he's exactly the same age. I wonder if they get along on that level somehow. I don't know. But we'll see where that thing goes. She was there. She was fired up. The whole let's effing go thing. She screamed let's effing go in front of his mother at the game and then started beating on the window. Like,
well, I think the mother of Travis and Jason Kelce has probably heard the F word before.
That's what I'm saying, right? But that means she was at least comfortable enough to know that woman a little bit. Because I'm not yelling let's effing go in front of somebody's mom unless I know the mom.
This is funny.
If T-Swift becomes friends with Mahomes' wife, KC will miss the playoffs. Oh, there it is, Mark. There it is. But Taylor's always had that thing where she loves to be a fan. She loves to go to, award shows and fan out, and everybody accuses her of faking the reactions and everything. But she looked like she was having a good time. And here's a couple reminders, Ketch, of how it can work out. Today is the birthday of both Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones. I don't know if you knew this or if anyone knows this but me, but they do share a birthday. He is 79 years old today. She is 54. God love Michael. God love Michael. He is an entire person that can rent a car older than her, and they've been together since 2000. They married in 2000, and theoretically, they're still together and happy and loving life. It can work with two famous people. Here's another one, Ketch. Bridget Wilson is 50 years old today. Hit the big 5-0. Bridget Wilson, if you don't know, if y'all are Adam Sandler fans, you know Billy Madison? Remember the teacher that Billy Madison fell in love with and somehow got to be with at the end of the movie, even though that's kind of creepy? We just all looked away from that part. That's Bridget Wilson. Bridget Wilson fell in love with and married tennis superstar Pete Sampras in 2000.
Nice job, Pete.
They have also been married now for 23 years. It can work. It can work out. I wish nothing but the best to Kelce and Swift, to whatever this is going to be. I root for these things to work, and we'll just see. But they're both busy humans. One's an NFL star. The other is about to resume a world tour. One of the most successful world tours ever coming up. The idea of dating, if you're one of those people, must be insane. I just hope they get a chance to actually, date if they want to and make it normal and it not be crazy. So best of luck to them. She certainly didn't do the Chiefs any disservice yesterday, Ketch. If that's an indicator of her effect on this team, the Chiefs fans are going to need them to get married quickly because that was impressive yesterday.
I liked her big red lipstick.
She looked beautiful.
She looked beautiful.
The red is a good part of her color wheel. There's nothing wrong with that.
So he's had traditionally a different flavor of women,
right,
in his life. I'm almost shocked that he would be in to Taylor Swift, given what his typical type. But here's to nothing but happiness for those kids.
Here's the other thing real quick, Ketch. I've had friends and acquaintances over the years that are women of Taylor Swift's body type, the taller girl, right? Deep down, sometimes they like to date a guy that makes them feel smaller.
She can wear heels around Travis Kelce.
And Travis Kelce will do that for her. Plus, again, they're exactly the same age. I wonder if that matters to Taylor. Anyway, super
Tim
chat,
Lee says-
$1.99 from Tim. If USC can have night games, then Red River can be at night. Okay? Sure. A little weird dig at LA. So, okay. But whatever. I think Ketch and I would both agree. All right. So let's move on, Ketch, to a couple of house divided stat performances. It is the house divided. We try to hit both sides, even though we end up talking Longhorns a lot more. Let's give both sides some love. We will start with Texas here. How about Andrew Beck and a kick return yesterday?
I can't even believe that, Chad.
I still can't. No, I've watched it 5 times at least. It still boggles my mind. I'm trying to tell my wife what that meant. I'm like, honey, you're a Steelers fan. Imagine if the other Watt brother had an 85-yard kick return. That's kind of what that's like. Fullbacks are not supposed to do that. H-backs are not supposed to do that. Andrew Beck, well done, sir. Great wheels getting around the outside. And that little hurdle at the end, that was a hell of an athletic play for a big truck that had gotten moving. Congrats. That's an 85-yard kick return. And Ketch, it's not only a big deal just sort of in itself, it really did propel them to the win because Jacksonville had just scored to make it 1 score. That crowd had calmed down thinking, okay, Jesus Christ, thank you, Trevor. Holy hell. Okay, now we can go ahead and then he goes 85 yards and the Jags never had a shot again.
You know what I always used to say about Andrew Beck was that he was underutilized as a weapon in the Texas offense.
Yeah. Hey, I've said years ago, Andrew Beck kind of reminds me of Devin Hester. People laughed back then, but they weren't laughing yesterday.
I mean, his career average is like 3 times that of Devin Hester, just so you know.
I heard they put the technology on him yesterday. He got over 12 miles an hour on that play, Ketch. Just
Paul
over.
says The Office, buy or sell number 1, The Office is set to be reboot, and that's awful.
Buy.
That better not be true. Buy.
Yeah, of course,
is that true?
There's no way. What, you're going to try to make it work a 3rd time? It's a miracle it worked twice, and you're going to just keep doing it? Stupid.
Well, you know what they say, too, maybe they're thinking 3's the trend. Buy or sell number 2, Swiftsy is already annoying, and it's going to end up being the most annoying story of 2023. Come on, Paul. It's been like 5 seconds.
Yeah, we'll sell. Swiftsy I like. I got to tell my daughter that. We were trying to come up with the name yesterday. I never came up with that one. That's not bad.
Stanley says the Cotton Bowl's in Fair Park. That's a neighborhood where people live. If I was him, I wouldn't want 90,000 drunks cruising around all night long in my neighborhood. That sounds like a nightmare. I mean, the state fair is every day.
Yeah, no, they run that. Yeah, I'm about to say the fair runs, a month and a half?
And just so you know, they do events at the fair.
They do.
Now, to be fair, if I lived in Fair Park, like maybe I wouldn't want it either. But when do those people ever matter? Like nobody in a neighborhood ever gets a say.
That's true.
Although in the Woodlands, they have concerts down the street, Chad. They're outdoors, and the concerts have to be over by 10 o'clock. Can't be having noise in the Woodlands.
Is that the rule at Cynthia Woods? Yeah. Love that venue.
Your kids get to school at a decent hour the next day if you take them to a concert because the shows have to be over.
That's good. That's good to know.
But the people in Fair Park, they always got stuff happening in their neighborhoods. It's part of the deal.
I agree. I totally agree. All right, Ketch, the other side of the house divided stat check is Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins. Ketch was one of those that had him in the fantasy lineup yesterday. Ketch, you know me, I'm not a fantasy player. How often does a guy either threaten or get to a 50 burger in fantasy? Because by one metric, I've heard 49. By another, I've heard 51 points. How often does that happen?
Never. I am sending a picture to Blake right now. It's a screenshot of my fantasy matchup because I played Mostert yesterday and he had 41.7.
You played against Mostert.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So I was like, if I ever needed a day for A-Chain to do what he did, I needed to cancel out the 40 burger that the other dude put up. And I needed, here it is. This is living proof. I needed A-Chain because Saquon Barkley got hurt.
Look at that. 49.
So I was in this position. I mean, I've had some injuries. I had to play Jackson Smith Najigba yesterday because I got injury issues. I got more injury issues because you can see Mike Williams at the top officially with a torn ACL. Got that gut blow today. I was watching the Sark press conference when that flashed up on the screen. And I was like, oh, God. Yeah. But yesterday, yes, I was forced to. I had no choice.
That's amazing. Projected 4.43, and he got a 49.3. So shout out to Devon A-Chain. Incredible fantasy day. The Dolphins were so silly. In a second, I'll show you just how silly the Dolphins were. So shout out to A-Chain. Also, as long as we're there, let's get into some NFL stats. I saw these all on SportsCenter, Ketch. Thought you might be interested. And we will start with the bottom of the barrel. The Texans did get to 1-2, though, yesterday. Texans fans, the left side is for you. 26% chance to make the playoffs now that you went 1-2. Look at that right side. That's what Minnesota's got to eat today. 1%. We've been talking about how you don't want to go 0-3. There's why. 1% of 0-3 teams actually make the playoffs. Speaking of the 0-2 embarrassment bowl yesterday between the Vikings and the Chargers, look at this stat. Most one-score games the last 2 seasons. Raiders, Chargers, Broncos have been in 15 of them each. And look at those records. 5-10, 8-7, 4-11.
How does that happen? That's because they're playing each other.
It's brutal. A lot of them, they're playing each other. You're right. A lot of times they are playing each other. AFC West is where you go for high-level entertainment. But, Ketch, if you want to know how historic yesterday was for the Dolphins, this one does it. They are the only team ever to go 350 rushing, 350 passing in a game.
Oh, my God.
Period, ever. It's never happened other than yesterday. Incredible for the Miami Dolphins. You mentioned, let's just take the 2 running backs. Forget Tua and the receivers for a second. You said Mostert had a great day at 40-something points. You realize Mostert had 3 rushing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown for 4. A-Chain had 2 rushing and 2 receiving for 4. And the team still scored 2 more touchdowns on the day.
Denver quit so early in that game.
Wow.
And I feel like Sean Payton just happened to be the head coach on the other side of the equation there. By the way, our guy Adam Gorney should be joining us like in a matter of minutes. We'll talk some Brandon Baker in just a second. I think your coaching career has to be euthanized if you give up 70.
That's unreal. By the way, how many touchdowns is 70, Billy Bob? How many touchdowns is that? How many? Is it 9? Is it 8? No, it's 10.
I almost don't have enough fingers. It's 10. I give it 10.
That's 10, Ketch. That's 10 touchdowns in one NFL game. When I hear a high school team, I broke my hand. When I hear that a high school team scores 70 points, I lose my mind. But an NFL team?
By the way, it does appear to be true. There is an Office reboot in the works.
That's a terrible idea.
The original showrunner, a guy named Greg Daniels, not the former Texas tight end, said, quote, "I can't tell whether fans would want more of it. And when I say more of it, I don't think it would be the same characters. I think it would be sort of like an extension of the universe. You know what I mean? Like the way The Mandalorian is an extension of Star Wars. But I don't know if that would be something people would want or not. It's hard to tell."
No, it's not. Not hard to tell. It's a bunch of people doing this. No.
I love The Office.
I love The Office, and I love The Mandalorian, and I love Star Wars. His analogy doesn't work there. Don't do it. Don't. Do something else. Do something that reminds us of The Office.
It won't be a paper company. It's going to be a pencil company. It'll be completely different. Same universe, but different.
Yeah, if you do it and it reminds us of it, that's separate. Like, remember Ketch when they were going to reboot Roadhouse? That was stupid on multiple levels.
I think they are still doing that.
That's a dumb idea. If you're going to make a movie where Ronda Rousey kicks people's ass, I'm good with that. Just do it. And then if we go, it kind of reminds me of Roadhouse, that's fine. Don't call it Roadhouse and just make your movie. Don't call this The Office. Just make it. Just say The Office guys have something else for you. And that's it.
That's going to be a Jake Gyllenhaal movie. That's happening.
That's a terrible idea.
I don't see a release date for it, but it's happening.
Terrible idea.
All right. We've got Adam Gorney waiting to come in, probably wondering why he agreed to do this. Although maybe he has opinions on both Roadhouse and the idea of a third Office reboot. I don't know. I leave the door open for him, Chad.
Yeah, he might. You never know. When you follow the crap bag, you never know what your lead-in is going to be. But Adam Gorney is ready to roll.
Now from parts unknown, because I don't know where Adam's born. It is Rivals.com national recruiting analyst Adam Gorney. Do you have like a nickname that we can throw in there where it's like Adam, the Tasmanian Devil Gorney?
On message boards, I have a lot of nicknames, but none of them.
Yes, you do.
None of them you can repeat.
And I'm from coal country, Northeast Pennsylvania. That's where I'm from. But I live in Southern California now, so I made it.
So does that make you
Northeast? He's from where they would make. Isn't that close to where the office would have been? Scranton,
20
PA.
minutes south. Yeah, 20 minutes south of Scranton. So I'm a big Office fan. There's a lot of murals up in that area. There's a famous seafood restaurant, Cooper's, where they used to eat, and Michael Scott ate there with Jan. I think Jan. No, not Jan. The other one, his wife. One time when there was a sexual harassment thing going on at work.
What about the Chili's when he drops the?
Yeah,
that's one of my favorites when they're at the business meeting at Chili's, and
yeah,
that's one of the best. Okay, sorry.
All right,
Brandon Baker, tell us about the Longhorns. This is a big one for the Longhorns, Adam, in a lot of different ways. He's the second highest recruit now in this Texas recruiting class. They're trying to end momentum. They're trying to really end this thing this year in the recruiting class with Ryan Wingo and Kobe Black. And I think they felt like Baker was the lightning rod to get that thing kickstarted. There's the whole modern day pipeline. What is the biggest story for you of the commitment of Brandon Baker to Texas?
Yeah, Jordan Davison and Marcus Harris and all those big time guys are going to do their own thing. But having Brandon Baker at Texas and a year to see how it goes is going to be huge. Jordan Davison is a phenomenal running back, a 5-star, which we've talked about 5-star running backs before and rarely naming them. He's very Ezekiel Elliott-like. And so I think Texas is definitely one of the schools highest on his list right now. There's been some talk about him actually reclassifying to 24. And I think that would help Texas even more. And then the success of Texas running backs this year and in previous years certainly helps as well. So Brandon Baker, on paper is a big get just because he's a very talented player. The trickle down effect to the other modern day guys is definitely significant as well. In terms of Baker, he's not going to be a guy who comes in and just kicks royal ass. Like, that's just not how he plays the position. He's like a technician. He's incredibly athletic, and he doesn't let anybody by him. Okay, so that is his game. He's not going to pancake everybody. He's not going to throw people on the ground and then fall on top of them. Those kinds of things those are not his game. But he's still the number one offensive tackle in the class because Elijah Brown is clean the entire game. He does not get touched. He doesn't have to worry about his right side. And a lot of people have wondered why Brandon Baker plays right tackle. Is it a concern of his physicality, his athleticism? What is it? He's always played right tackle, and DeAndre Carter, the Auburn commit, always plays left tackle at Mater Dei. It just seems to work out for them. They are by far the best program in the country right now, and they're not going to switch up. He could easily move to left tackle, but as Christian Jones leaves and Brandon Baker steps in there, I think he has a really good shot of playing early.
Adam, in terms of Brandon, I'm looking at him as far as the geography of it. I don't see a lot of schools on his list that are near modern day, and I don't see a lot of schools on his list that are near Texas in terms of the regionality there. So what would you tell a Texas fan about this commitment? Is it one that they may have to sweat out towards December, or do you feel like this is one they can kind of go to other there may be other soap operas out there, but Brandon's not one of them?
Yeah, I don't get the soap opera vibe from him. I mean, he took his time with the recruitment. He kind of really weighed everything out. Oregon was really the biggest competitor, and I would kind of say the only competitor down the stretch. I mean, he really loved Adrian Clem up there. If Clem stayed there instead of going to the New England Patriots, we might be having a different discussion today. They were that close. Loved Dan Lanning, Alik Terry, and some other guys. And Lanning has put some Southern California guys on that staff there. What they did to Colorado this weekend, I mean, anybody would want to go play for the Ducks now, right? I mean, it'd just be a nice place to play. But his brother went there. There are connections there. All of those things were already factored in. So he still chose Texas over that. I think Kyle Flood played a massive role here. Brandon Baker said this past weekend that, Texas sort of manhandling Alabama up front played a big role. I think we saw that a few weeks ago that Texas didn't luck into that win. So I think that played a big role, and some other factors as well. But moving to the SEC is a big thing, and playing on that biggest stage is also a big deal to Baker. So I don't see Nebraska being much of a threat late. I don't think Ohio State really had his attention until late, other than his relationship with Justin Fry. Florida State's interesting, but I just don't see it. I think as long as Texas kind of keeps churning out wins and kind of keeps pushing here, they should be fine.
I got to go back a little bit. Your comment about Jordan Davison earlier, for those that don't know, I mean, Adam mentioned it. He's got a 5-star ranking in the 2025 recruiting class, and those don't just get tossed out to running backs freely these days. In fact, that he's an early 5-star running back's even more surprising, because I would tend to think with running backs, you take your time and maybe evaluate them to make sure you want to give them a 5-star ranking. He's ranked 12th nationally, number 1 player in the state of California for next year at this point in the rankings. You're saying he's considering reclassifying to the class of 2024? Like, is that how, if you had to handicap what that looks like, what would it look like?
Yeah, I think I think that's sort of an open secret out here, that it's at least being considered. He's been around for years now. He's been known since his middle school years. He was the lead running back as a sophomore at Mater Dei, which anyone knows that program. And I'm going to say this delicately, it's sort of like the Alabama of high school football. Like, no nonsense, constantly wins. Every loss is the end of the world, like that kind of situation. And he's taken a pounding in high school. They give him the ball a lot. He's taken a lot of hits, made a lot of plays, but there has been that talk that it is at least a possibility that he could reclass, that he wouldn't need this season and then a whole other senior season before going to college. Especially at running back. He's a kid who actually lost weight in the offseason because he was getting a little too bulked up. Now, he's not going to look like some other running backs that are just muscled up. He doesn't look like Bijan Robinson, just chiseled out of muscle, but he's a strong kid, and in pads, he is just phenomenal. So I think that's going to be a discussion to be had after this season. I don't think he's going to get into it now. He doesn't want to, deflect from what is going on at Mater Dei this season, which could be another undefeated season and, national championship on paper type thing. But I think after the season, there's going to be some revisiting there, and then kind of a decision made on how that looks.
Well, what's interesting about that is, and look, just because he's only a junior this year doesn't mean that he hasn't gone around and seen a bunch of schools. I mean, he's done his visits, but he would be making his decision without official visits if he reclassifies. And I think I mainly bring it up because I think Texas, it's funny. I thought I'd already entered a future cast for him for Texas. I think there's a strong belief on the Texas side of things that they're in really good shape with Jordan Davison. So if he reclassifies, that the impact of that on some weird little things would be interesting if he committed to Texas.
Yeah.
Then it gives them potentially another 5-star in this recruiting class. And they were 17th in the country yesterday. They got a chance to move up, but I've wondered what would it take for Texas to get back into the top 5 this year in recruiting, whether they would take enough players. But if they close with Baker, they close with Wingo, they close with Kobe Black, and then Jordan Davison reclassifies. And this is a big if because we got a lot of steps down the road. But suddenly I think there's a path towards maybe Texas repeating as a top 5 team, even if they don't take a full 25-man class this year, or even if they do, like you have to have some big dogs to get that high up in the rankings. And I hadn't really given a lot of consideration for Davison reclassifying. So forgive me, that one kind of caught me off guard a little bit. Interesting that it's kind of a pretty well-known secret in California.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not something that's locked in stone, but it has
Right.
been something that's been floated around. And I've talked to him about it, and I said, do you care if another running back is in the class? Do you care if you're the only? Do you want to be the only guy? Do you want to? Some guys want to be with 2 or 3 other guys. Some guys want to be themselves. And he said he doesn't really care. And so, having Jarrett Gibson in the class isn't going to be a factor there. And just like with Georgia and Ohio State and some other schools that he's really strongly considering, I don't think it's going to play much of a factor there. So we'll see after the season how that kind of plays out, how big of a situation that is, or if it was just kind of talk earlier in the year. But I think it's definitely something to watch.
It's interesting. I'm just looking at the chat as it was coming in here, just kind of along the lines. Jerry threw in what would happen to the 2 running backs Texas has committed off of that discussion.
Well, let's not yell fire in a crowded theater by having the conversation. That being said, Jarrett Gibson did visit Florida this weekend on an unofficial visit. CJ Baxter was going to Florida State at this time last year, not Florida State as a commitment or anything, but as a Texas commitment, he was taking unofficial visits and going to games. I think this is part of the world that Texas lives in. I don't know. I think Christian Clark is coming to Texas. I haven't got the sense that kid's wavering at all. I don't know. It would be an interesting set of dynamics. I think both of those guys are okay with playing together. I don't think there's been any sense that they're different. I think they feel like they complement each other. Jordan Davison would probably at least maybe make one of those guys go flinch a little bit. But again, I don't want to yell fire in a crowded theater. We're months away. As Adam kind of laid it out, I mean, it's still September.
Yeah.
We're probably talking about if something like that were even to come around, it's late November, it's December leading into signing day. And technically, I guess if he was going to enroll early, he could finish out his full junior year. It'd be hard to imagine, my God, that he'd be an early enrollee after the first semester of his junior year. So there's a lot of ifs and pieces of that to take into the equation. I think it'd probably be okay. I mean, if you thought Jordan was going to make a decision, he probably enrolls in the fall, right, of next year. I mean, it's hard to imagine a guy leaving 3 semesters early. So he's probably not an early enrollee guy. So the decision might come way after signing day if it was something that he was going to consider and do at all, right?
Yeah. And like you said, I think Christian Clark is locked in, not one to really play the recruiting game all that much after he made a decision. Gibson, don't forget, is from Gainesville. He was from Gainesville before he transferred up to Georgia and then to IMG. He's been committed to Florida already. He's visited, I think, now twice this season. So there is a little bit of smoke there to watch. We'll see. I'm sure seeing the Charlotte-Florida game was not a thriller for him in person. But some kids feel like they're the missing piece that can come in and change that all around, and he's the piece. So we'll see how that plays out. I was reading the comments too, and I'm stuck on Prison Mike because that's the best Office episode ever. That's the most hilarious one. And I have to shout out Sandman 23 for saying it.
Sandman's had some good chats lately on the Specs chat line. Sandman's doing very well.
Is it Prison Mike or is it Scott's Tots?
Scott's Tots.
Oh, Scott's Tots.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Maybe the most uncomfortable episode they ever came up with. That was unbelievable. So, Adam, if I'm a Longhorn fan and I want to get greedy, which is, I guess, what recruiting is all about sometimes, and I'd love to have the bookend tackle thing from modern day happen. Talk about Carter coming in this week for the Kansas game, and just talk about kind of his situation if you know anything about it. I mean, obviously he goes to high school a long way from Auburn. Is there some kind of big connection with him in Auburn, or do you think this is a fluid situation, and and how Auburn and Texas play this year could be huge?
Yeah, that's been the curious thing, is why DeAndre Carter committed to Auburn. He was looking at Michigan State and the situation there. I don't think he wanted to get involved in. Texas was involved, and he committed to Auburn. He seems to just really like it there. He visited multiple times. He was there for Big Cat Weekend over the summer. The thing about DeAndre Carter is he's massive, like huge, massive, like 6'6", probably 340, 350. Just a huge human being, but so soft-spoken, like incredibly shy, does not like doing interviews, doesn't like talking, not because I'm an annoying person, but just because he just is really quiet. So it was interesting that he committed there so early. And now he's coming to Texas, where he's going to have a close friend, his bookend offensive line teammate, someone who can kind of take the attention off of him a little bit. It is definitely something interesting to see. He's also going to be at Texas on the weekend that Georgia just absolutely clobbers Auburn, So I would not be surprised if they have that game playing in some sort of lounge somewhere where DeAndre Carter is standing, just to kind of give them a sense that Texas is going like this and Auburn is at least doing sort of the parallel until Hugh Freeze gets that turned around. So I would not be surprised if, and I'm not saying this at all like that's going to happen, but a lot of kids commit early just to get reporters off their back. And then they figure it out later. We'll see if that is the case, but Kyle Flood is definitely going after DeAndre Carter. I absolutely 100% think he's an inside guy at the next level. Even though he plays left tackle, he's light enough on his feet, even at like 350 pounds, to play left tackle and do really well. But he would be phenomenal inside, and I think other schools are going to have a chance here.
All right, Adam, I have a bit of an unorthodox question, but I'm interested to see what your answer might be. So last week, Steve Wiltfong from 24/7 reports on the Weston Davis visiting Texas story, right? Not the biggest scoop of all time. Hey, a kid's taking a visit. But what ended up happening there was that it got public, and suddenly people are talking about it on social media, and Weston Davis now backing out of taking the unofficial visit to Texas. My question is, have you ever reported on anything that changed the scope of history? That you reported on a guy was getting ready to take a visit, and then that little piece of information ended up maybe changing the outcome of where a guy goes, and then that guy goes on to win the Heisman or something like that. Can you think of a situation where a little bit of reporting like changed what might have happened, and then it went on to like be an interesting footnote in history?
That's a tough one. It's been a lot of years. maybe my reporting doesn't have that kind of impact. I reported once that Matt Elam told me that Urban Meyer had a dream about coaching him, and then that's why he committed to Florida in the end. And that was one of many Urban Meyer recruiting stories. I covered Aaron Hernandez in high school, and I'm here. I live to tell the tale. So that's good.
You didn't report on something related to Aaron Hernandez. He didn't kill you. You're still here.
Right. He's still here.
Bravo.
I'm still here. So I think those are probably two of them. But in terms of Weston Davis, that is interesting, that he would back out of it. Maybe he kind of, he's not a kid who loves to talk anyway. He's not a kid who loves attention. So maybe at some point he sneaks in for maybe a little bit of a more private visit. Yes, Aaron Hernandez is from Connecticut. When I first started at Rivals, I covered the UConn Huskies football, men's and women's basketball teams all at once, and I went out to his games in Bristol. I actually saw him in hard hit in New Britain, Connecticut. That's where his team was playing, and he was Aaron Hernandez against high school competition. I mean, that's pretty. He was against Connecticut high school competition. it was pretty unfair. So I do remember a funny story about him, though. He was committed to Connecticut, or was about to commit to UConn, and Randy Edsall, he went to his office to tell him that he wasn't going to stay there and he was going to flip to Florida. And apparently Randy Edsall got in his car and was like chasing him down the freeway, trying to get him to pull over.
Wow.
So he could tell him that wasn't the best idea for his future. So a lot of Aaron Hernandez stories, but I'll leave those for another day.
Interesting. Someone chasing Aaron Hernandez. So,
Right. Yeah.
you know, kind of a different vibe.
Hey, Adam, I'll give you like my reverse version of the Weston Davis. When Kyler Murray was flirting with Texas, like Texas people were so paranoid about, hey, Kyler's talking to us, but it's super sensitive. And I mean, I had people who would tell me, if you report that, we're done. I will literally never answer your phone call again. And so kind of sat on it. And then ended up being Kyler, of all people, who tweeted out the picture of him on the Texas visit. But that whole thing was supposed to be super hush-hush Weston Davis style. Let me sneak in and sneak out, because they didn't want the attention that came with it. And like we had multiple sources who were terrified. I once on a Saturday night made a very vague hint about Kyler Murray, and it could have been anybody. I just said a prospect, and I had Texas officials calling me at midnight on a Saturday. What are you doing? What are you doing? You're going to cause this whole thing to blow up, and we're not going to get him. And in the end, I didn't have. If you asked me that question, I wouldn't have Kyler Murray as an example, because I caved.
Yeah,
and kind of kept that under wraps, because I didn't want to lose every single connection and source that I had connected to the staff.
I don't blame you.
He's funny. He's too funny that way.
Yeah.
Adam, any other Texas related? I mean, we mentioned Kobe Black before we let you go. Kobe Black, Ryan Wingo in Colorado is suddenly interesting. I had a source. Let me tell you what a source. I'll read you the text. This just came out of nowhere yesterday. Wingo was supposed to announce after Wyoming. Colorado hype train might have distracted him, but still expecting the kid to come to Texas. It's what one of my best sources texted me last night. Any Ryan Wingo, Deion Sanders, Colorado thoughts?
Yeah, there was some rumors that he might have made sort of a commitment to the staff after that game to Texas, and is just sort of waiting it out to see when it's right to announce publicly. When I saw him out here in California over the summer, he was wearing Texas shorts. He talked very highly of Texas. Missouri is interesting because it's hometown. Luther Burden stayed there, and he's playing really, really well for them. Drinkwitz was sort of on the hot seat coming into the season. Now he's 4-0, so there might be some buzz there, but it didn't seem like just because Luther Burden stayed home, Ryan Wingo was going to stay home and do the same thing. It actually seemed like he wasn't as interested in that. So I think Texas is still in a very good spot. I sort of predicted on my betting podcast this week that Oregon was the play of the century last week, and it luckily turned out to be that way. I feel USC is also going to put the hammer down this week, and Colorado just does not have the manpower yet to stay with what USC can do on offense. So whether it's a shootout or whatever, it's going to be 55-21 one way or another if Colorado can score 21 points. So it'll be interesting to see how kids are interested in Colorado. If they're going to, a lot of them are going to be there for that game. It'll be a great environment. I don't know for how long, but Deion was smart after the game too. He didn't say, we're a finished product. He said, this is, in the making still. So I don't know if Ryan Wingo wants to be a part of that. I think he will circle back. He'll be interested in Colorado a little bit. It's hard not to be for a lot of kids right now, but the way safer bet for his football future is at Texas in Steve Sarkisian's offense. So Sean Lewis has coached, he left the head coaching job to be an offensive coordinator at Colorado. And 4 games in, they're already talking about him being a head coach at other places. His name has been floated at Michigan State and elsewhere. Who knows how long Dion is going to stay there? I mean, Mel Tucker was there for 1 year, had a losing record, and got hired by Michigan State with one of the biggest salaries in college football before, his ordeal. So who knows how long Dion will be there? Who knows if an SEC job opens, if he's going to jump at it? I think Ryan Wingo is smart enough and savvy enough to kind of see how this is all going to play out. And I still feel very strongly that Texas is in great shape there.
Adam, before we let you go, just last thought. I'm literally on the article that got published like 3 hours ago on rivals.com. I encourage everybody. I love these. These are my favorite articles. I love the rumor mill. Don't get me wrong. I love the rumor mill. But nothing's better than a let's check in on the 5 stars as their freshman article. And Adam just posted that over on rivals.com. And last baby question, 60 seconds. Because I want to get you out of here. We've already had you on for like 20 plus minutes. I know you got a busy day, but I'm scrolling through. I've been literally looking at it, and I can't wait to really sit down and focus on this. Like, Chad, before we go, I'm going to ask you about David Hicks Jr. because he was the nation's number 3 player, and I just kind of want to know what you think after 4 games at A&M. Dante Moore, is it fair to say Arch Manning better be good? Because Dante Moore looks like a guy that could have been number 1. He's looked really good so far.
Yeah, other than that Utah game where on the first play of the game he threw a pick 6, and then,
he's a baby. I give him.
Yeah, and that was again an environment that is impossible to play well in, young and inexperienced like that. But Dante Moore, he really did the smart thing in his recruitment. He wanted to go to Notre Dame, but then they took CJ Carr sort of unexpectedly. So that would have been an interesting move. Michigan just never really clicked with him for some weird reason. Then he was committed to Oregon when Kenny Dillingham was the offensive coordinator there. Dillingham goes to Arizona State, so Dante Moore is kind of stuck. He could have probably stayed at Oregon, sat behind Bo Nix for a year, and then had the starting job there. Will Stein has been a great play caller for them. But he goes to UCLA with a situation that's kind of wide open. Chip Kelly does the Chip Kelly thing and starts Ethan Garbers in the first game. Everyone knows Dante Moore's the starter there. He gets the job. He's looked very good. He's looked exactly what you would think Dante Moore would look like. Not super athletic, not a guy that's just going to blow you away with size or arm strength, but makes every right decision except for that pick 6, and just throw it all around to Logan Loya and Josiah Norwood, not exactly elite receivers, and still make them look good and put points up. So yes, Arch, the ceiling, the excitement to see him is very, very high. But Dante Moore is a guy that I think for 3 years will put up really big numbers in Chip Kelly's offense and then be an early first-round pick.
There you go. Adam Gorney, he's from Northeast Pennsylvania, but now he lives in LA. He's always number 1 in your heart. No matter what time of night he posts on your message board with good, bad news, indifferent. Don't call him naughty names. Just call him your favorite recruiting analyst. Adam, we always appreciate it, my man. Have a great rest of the week. Thank you for your time.
See you guys.
Thanks, Adam.
New background for Adam, too, if I'm not mistaken, with the Rivals and the helmet. I don't remember that.
I know he's had the Rivals back there. The helmet may have been new.
I think the helmet was a new addition.
He's
Real
got that
quick,
going.
David Stone, number 3 player in the country last year from Katy, Texas. What's your early vibe on David Hicks? What have you seen from him in the games that he's – what did I say? I meant David Hicks, not David Stone, but David Hicks Jr. What do you think about the 5-star?
The D lineman, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, with the rotation they've got, I haven't seen him a ton. What I've seen, I've liked. I think it's 3 total tackles for him, couple of solos. From what I've seen of him, he's looked pretty good. But that's a deep, deep room, man. They've got a lot of dudes on that defense.
He's got 4 tackles for loss so far.
4 tackles for loss. Okay.
But maybe those are his 4 tackles, maybe.
Yeah, right. That's maybe that's true. Maybe I looked at the stats wrong here when I pulled it up. But yes, you're correct. Yeah, he's looked pretty good. He looks like he fits in, he's going to fit in that run of what they want. There's a sheep room
instead of deep.
Ah, okay.
Instead of it's
All
a
right,
deep
Sandman.
room, it's a sheep room. I actually thought that was one of Sandman's more clever on the spot turnarounds.
Yeah, I didn't. That's all right. It's okay. It's okay. There've been much better from Sandman on that one. That's come on.
I mean, he did that on the spot, you know? I mean, it's literally the last comment in the chat right now.
Yeah, I could do something on the spot in the middle of a restaurant, but that doesn't make it great.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Just because he did it, he's had much better work than that, is what I'm saying. He's been putting in a lot of good work. Yeah, right. No, that's okay. It's all right. Don't worry about it. No, there's no doubt. That's probably the biggest compliment I could give Hicks so far. He hadn't felt out of place when I've seen him play, but he hasn't gotten a ton of reps either, because there's a lot of hound dogs on that defensive front for A&M, and they're going to need them. Before we get out of here, Ketch, apparently the update on Wigman is 2 to 4 weeks.
I was just about to ask you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what's in the next 2 to 4 weeks?
Somebody threw in Arkansas, Alabama, and at Tennessee is in the next 2 to 4 weeks. So because they play Bama at home and then go right to Knoxville the next week. So yeah, this means Max Johnson is going to be locked in at quarterback, changes that offense a little bit. We'll see what Bobby Petrino and Max Johnson agree to on certain things. The Evan Stewart touchdown against Auburn was silly. Max Johnson threw into double coverage and still got that ball in there. It was a nice play. He's shown a little. There's moxie to him at times, and they ran the ball pretty well against Auburn, Ketch. But the question now is, can they handle their business against Arkansas? Arkansas may not be winning all these games, but they're putting up fights. They put up a fight against BYU. They put up a fight against LSU. If they bring a fight to Jerry World, can the Aggies close that discussion? And then could they possibly give Bama a game with Max Johnson at quarterback? We will see. But A&M's look good at their place. Now let's see what they look like at Jerry's place. This is a very different team, man. Home and anywhere else, they feel like they're going to be different. Let's just see if they can.
This is one they have to win, though, because.
Oh, yeah. It's just like the Auburn game. Yeah, it's like the Auburn game. If you're even close to where you think you want to be, you got to win this game. They've only lost one game to Arkansas in the whole run.
Which is wild to me. That's wild.
Yeah, and they've been and they should have lost a couple more than that, because those games are wild and crazy and right down to the end. But this is one of those things Jimbo has figured out in his time. He's got the one loss, obviously, but he's only lost one time to Arkansas. They need to win this one, and then we'll see what they've got. But that's a tough stretch. Bama at home, at Tennessee, and you got to do it now without Wigman.
Where does Jimbo Fisher rank all-time among A&M head coaches?
Oh, God. You're not really throwing that one at me at 252, are you?
Not that I ask you the question. It's that those might be my final words of the show before we wrap up. What do you think, Chad? Go. We'll save that for another day.
Yeah, he's on the list. How about that? Mike Williams, you mentioned earlier in the NFL, ACL. That one's bad for the Chargers. Not that they need any more bad right now, but that one hit during the show today. And real quick, before we get out of here, Ketch, since we are house divided, happy 48 to Dat Win today. A&M's all-time leading tackler. And happy birthday to one of my favorite all-time analysts, proving once again, Ketch, the other side of if you're good enough, you're old enough. Today, Hubie Brown is 90 years old, and I would tell him if he still wants to keep working, dude. You're still one of the best.
I mean, he's better than we are. He's 90.
That's not even the bar. He is – there are two NBA analysts that I just think are at the elite, super elite level, and I learn from them every time. It's him and Doris. As long as they want to keep working, I'm good. I still think he's nails. I still think he kills.
He really is. He's even now. I've heard Lee Corso's a perfect example. Like once every weekend, I think to myself, it might be time. I've never thought that with Hubie.
Exactly.
Just keep going, Hubie.
The Lee Corso thing, right? You can feel them kind of phasing it out and finding just specific spots for him. And there's obviously a stroke in his history, and you got to be sensitive to that. There was the Pat Summerall stuff. There's all kinds of different guys you could bring up as an example. I watch a basketball game with Hubie, and I'm listening, and I'm going, my God, he's still spitting those stats. So God love you, Hubie Brown. 90 years old today.
I'm good unless you want to get into the A&M Mount Rushmore thing. I'm curious where Jimbo ranks in relation with Kevin Sumlin. Unless we're going to do that, I'm ready to wrap it up.
Yeah. Football with Friends, 3:30 this afternoon. It's coming right up with Alex Dunlap, and the Outsiders will be breaking it down at 9 o'clock tonight. Get you the reaction to the games. How did we do in our picks? By the way, I did not lose a pick this week. We'll get you the details on that.
Look at you showing off.
Did not lose a pick. Now, is there any money on the line? No, but I did not lose a pick. I'll just take that as a matter of pride. We'll get to all that tonight at 9 o'clock. So keep it right here on Orange Bloods Live. Thank you for subscribing. Up over 17,000, headed towards 18,000 subscribers. Like it. Get your notifications. We appreciate you being with us until noon tomorrow, where we will probably not discuss that Jimbo question. At least I hope.